call to order the Corporate and Administrative Services Committee meeting for Thursday, July 23rd. We are meeting at the Sunshine Coast Regional District within the traditional territories of the Seashell Nation and the Squamish Nation. And we have an amended agenda before us this morning. Are there any other additions or deletions that maybe came up in the last few hours? Director Hilt.
I think number 7, the voting might not be accurate. I think Pender Harbor should get a vote in this one.
Yes.
So that was, yeah.
Gary, you concur?
So it would be all, I believe.
All, okay. Any other? Yeah, Director Lee?
Yes, I'd like to add an agenda item, which is to make a motion on how to support the province's request for the SCRD to comment on the proposed renaming of Madeira Park.
Under new business?
Sure, that'd be a good place.
So we'll call it renaming port or something like that.
Sure.
Okay. Any other additions or deletions or changes? Or anything else you could come up with? All right, so we have an amended agenda. I'd look for a motion to adopt the agenda as amended. Director Toth, Director Pratt, all those in favor? Thank you. I'll move on to item 2, the budget project status report. So again, as in past, we'll go page by page through this. And we'll do it fairly slowly because I know you're juggling different computers and screens and all those kinds of things. So let's look at page 1. This is items 1 through 19. Any questions on page 1? Director Hiltz.
Thanks. It's on line 18, the Cliff Gilker, the potable water supply. Do we know if that's in bedrock or in unconsolidated sediments? Sorry, I should have asked earlier, but I missed. It's quite deep.
Remco, that's probably one for you. No, that'd be Ian. Sorry. Go ahead, Ian.
And I'm sorry, Chair. I don't know the answer to that. Sorry.
Okay. No problem.
Yeah, apologies. I should have submitted that question earlier.
All right, we can make a note and come back with that. Anything else on page 1? Director Lee?
I was just wondering how the public would find details of these if they were interested. Is there an easy way for them to find details?
Tina?
So it depends what year the projects were approved. So if the budgeted year was in 2020, they can find all the detailed budget proposals on our website under the budget documents. And if it was 2019, they just look to the budget documents for there because all the budget proposals have the details related to the business case for the projects.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions on page 1? So moving over to the second page, items 20 through 38. Staff's doing a great. Oh, Director Lee, and then, sorry, Director Pratt, and then Director Lee.
Just a point of order, Chair. I don't remember us making a motion to receive all the reports prior to discussing them. So maybe if we could do that.
That would be awesome.
That would be great. So I'd like to move that, please.
Okay, and seconded. All those in favor? Thank you. You can keep me in line all day today. That'd be awesome. Director Lee, over to you.
The food waste drop-off for Area A is Q3 2021. Is there should we be thinking about moving that up, or is that about best we can do in these times of COVID and all the things that are happening?
Typo, 2020.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else on page 2 up to number 38? Dr. Lee, I'm going to lower your hand. Okay. Next page, items 39 through 58. We'll look at 59 through 76. Director Toth?
Just looking at item 76, the signage upgrade to include First Nation names and translations. Wondering if there's any resources within that to include support for pronunciation guides, either on our website or on the Seashell Nation's website.
Jim Hall?
Thank you for the question. Without having scoped it and knowing what the costs might be, difficult for me to answer. I will say that staff have heard that area of interest not only from directors but from the community, and it is on our list of things to do. Capacity is part of the issue from a staff perspective, but certainly an exciting opportunity and one that staff would look forward to. Thanks.
And perhaps it could be a collaborative project with the Seashell and the Squamish Nation. I know the Seashell Nation have some pronunciations already available to the public. So it could be we work with them. Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. Line number 74. There's a mention of a focus group engagement. Just wondering if that's past or that's upcoming. Just clarification on the timing.
I apologize to the committee. I don't have full details. I know that there were some conversations had with some groups that are frequent users of the zoning bylaw, such as realtors, but I'm unsure whether there's any further work to do with those groups that we identified in the project plan.
And the resume date of Q4, that's still kind of a semi-solid date, I guess.
Yes, yes, Director, and thank you for the question, Chair. We have a vacancy in the planning department that will be filled in a number of weeks, and we're hoping that with that added capacity and as we move into restart, that we will be in a better position to not only manage the high pace of development activity right now, but also give attention to some of these important proactive projects that we know are needed to respond to some of the needs in the community. Thanks.
Any other questions up to number 76? Director McMahon, are you with us? Cool, awesome. So let's move on to the next page, page number 77 through 96. Director Ties?
Thank you, Chair. Wondering on website redesign phase 2, what that looks like and whether we get to see like a little bit of a plan or a presentation from the redesign team as to, or a sneak peek.
Who's taking this one? Sherry? Okay.
Thank you, Chair. So that proposal is, well, it's scheduled for fourth quarter. We do have a final report in from the initial team that did the review of our website, and we still have yet to go through that and determine how that will plug into our plans going forward. But we can certainly bring an outline forward if the board would be interested in seeing that before the tender document goes out. That is definitely something we can provide in advance if the board wishes to review the feedback that came out of the initial review session, and then kind of look at that with an eye to going forward, how we may proceed.
Director Ties, would you like to see
Sounds
something?
good to me. I don't know if we need a motion in that regard, or is that just something that staff can take away?
Sherry, take away? Okay. Sounds good. Any other questions on items up to number 96? Next page, 97 through 114. I had a question about number 114, and then we'll come to Director McMahon. Number 114 was looking at hillside development. It says dialogue with Scredo in Q2. I know Q2 was when everything just kind of blew up. So I'm just wondering if we've done anything around this at all.
Thank you for the question, Chair. The conversation that was had with Scredo was about this project, about Scredo's access to some research support that could be added to this project, and also how this project fits with the regional growth baseline research project that was approved as part of the 2020 budget. And staff, and this was part of the conversation with Scredo, staff are seeing that there's synergy between the two projects, and that the sequence would benefit from doing the from seeing through the regional growth baseline information as a precursor to any more detailed work at Hillside. And so staff have shifted to put focus on that regional growth research project, and I believe that's noted elsewhere in the document. Expect to be in intergovernmental staff-to-staff conversations shortly about the scope of that to see it get started shortly. Thank you.
Thank you. I do know in a conversation with the executive director of Scredo, they are working with a company and putting together a new investment website for the Sunshine Coast, and anticipate it'll be done by the end of the summer. So we'll be reaching out to all of the various governments with information in early fall. Director McMahon and then Director Lee.
Sure. Item 101 is the water lines for the new Church Road project. I'm just wondering if we know where they're going to be. Are they going to be in Area E, or are they going to be in the town of Gibsons?
Yeah.
Thank you for the question. The answer is town of Gibsons. They're going to be on the town of Gibson side, and we are between Reed Road and Pratt, and we are also confirming the alignment between North and Fisher at the moment. And it could also be that they will be on the south side of the road as well. So they will be all on the south side of the road.
Director Mann, follow up?
Yeah, well, we see, I understand the town had planned a multi-use pedestrian bike lane on their side of Reed Road. Are we going to have a look at a plan for that, or is it going to happen as part of this project?
It's not going to happen as part of the project, but we, in our design, we account for the fact that they're planning to do that. And we're also looking at if we do it between Pratt, if we put it on the south side between North and Fisher, we're also seeing we could even put it on the off the pavement. That's what we were discussing actually this morning with the Ministry of Transportation. So there might be an opportunity to at least have some kind of gravel paths there as well for residents to use, so they don't have to walk over the road. But that's currently being discussed with the Ministry.
All right, Director Lee.
Line 103 and 104, it talks about water supply plan for North and South Pender. I'm just confirming that's part of our WASAC project. Is that correct?
Thank you for the question. This project has to do with the development of a water hydrologic model for the water distribution systems in both areas to support a planning initiative in 2021. And both projects, as indicated, have not been started yet. And you're correct. Ultimately, the plan development of those plans will be part of the will be one of the focus areas of the WASAC.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just to follow up on the Church Road water line. So the original plan, or the sort of tentative plan, was the north side from Fisher to Trolley and then cross. So that's in flux then. And the other question that I've been getting a few questions about impact to the residents, and just clarifying that the pipe from the Elphinstone Reservoir to the Reed Road Reservoir is a dedicated line, and there will be no services off of that. Is that true, or?
Thank you for the question. There will be a dedicated line from Elphinstone area, from the wells to Church Road, to the reservoir at Elphinstone, and a dedicated line from Elphinstone from the reservoir to Reed Road Reservoir. And there will be distribution lines going the other way around. And that's where the hydrants and all the connections are attached to. So there will be two lines, a distribution line and a supply line.
So a follow-up, would people expect service disruptions through that process? It doesn't, that's kind of the question I'm getting from people. Will there be service disruptions as part of that project?
They would be as minimal as with any water main replacement, because the old water mains will continue to stay alive until the new ones are tested and ready to go.
Any other questions? So let's move on to the next page. Number 115 through 133. Director McMahon?
Yeah, I was just wondering about the connector trail, number 117, how that's going, and perhaps, could follow up with staff later. I was just walking that the other day.
Chair, I apologize. I don't have any more up-to-date information than what is in the document, which I realize goes back a little while, but certainly can follow up. Thanks.
Any other questions? Up to number 133. Director Pratt.
Thank you. Regarding number 115, and this will probably lead into the staff report a little bit later as well. I'm just wondering if GM Hall can comment on the parking lot design plans, if any of the scope of that included, or how much of that scope included the boat launch access within within that plan.
Thank you for the question. So the Ministry of Transportation approved a request from the regional district a couple of years ago when this project was being scoped to add additional roadside parking within, I believe it's all within the Modi right-of-way. Some of it is along Red Roofs and some of it is along Fisherman. And it doesn't, there would be some synergy with the boat ramp in the sense that there would be a little bit more and generally improved parking around Cooper's Green Park. But to my recollection, it didn't directly, it wouldn't have a direct impact on the ramp itself, nor was it particularly focused on trailer parking. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions up to the end of number 133? All right, next page. So these are deferred and completed. Any questions on any of these? All right, before we move on, are there any that any of you missed in the whole report that you want to make sure we cover off? All right, good job. Thank you for doing that work ahead of time. That makes a huge difference in moving this forward. And thank you to staff for all the work that goes into that. So let's move on to Annex B. This is our variance report for Q2. And we're going to turn that over to Tina.
Thank you, Chair. So as part of the Sunshine Coast Regional District's financial process, quarterly variance reports are provided to the committee on the third quarter generally, or second, third, and part of year end. At the May 28th Corporate and Administrative Services Committee, staff provided a preliminary variance up to April 30th, including a forecast analysis and consideration of the COVID-19 pandemic. Staff also sought direction on possible mitigation options, including service level and financial objectives. These items are addressed in subsequent reports within this agenda. Many of the SCRD services are in a slight surplus position at the moment, and noting that as a regional district, funds cannot be transferred from one service to another. As expected, functions with deficits are those most impacted by the loss of fees and charges revenue. Staff have highlighted the various services where there are current deficits. As stated in the April 30th variance, taxation for 2021 is currently estimated to increase by 6.03% over 2020. This increase does not account for any further items approved to date, such as the Seashell landfill ground disturbance remediation or impacts to the recreation facilities restart. It also doesn't account for any collective bargaining that is still currently underway. Current deficits are projected to require an additional 2 to 3%. Most of these items relate to property taxation. So it's important to note that user rates, parcel taxes for water and wastewater and refuse collections are not factored into these amounts. There's been several positive gains due to the actions taken to mitigate financial impacts related to COVID-19. So, however, there are still several unknowns, such as the possibility of a second wave, which may further impact the financial status of the regional district for both 2020 as well as into 2021. So thank you, and senior leadership are available for any questions the committee might have.
Thank you. I know when we talked, is this the one we were talking about at the gender review where he says it's like Jello? We don't know. It's just moving all over the place. Yes. And there was an announcement, yesterday, I believe, from the provincial government that there potentially is some funding coming for transit. And we won't know details about that until probably September. It's still getting finalized. But those are the kinds of things that are, we know what this looks like today, but we don't know what that's going to look like tomorrow. And some of the decisions we make today will impact some of those as well. So, Director Ties.
Thank you, Chair. I'm referring to page 15. There's a number of wastewater plants that are listed that are in deficit. I'm wondering which ones have reserves and which ones can cover these deficits with their reserves and which ones can't.
Martina?
So most of them have operating reserves currently that are uncommitted to cover these particular deficits. The two that I would note that are less in a financial stable position would be that of Canoe and Merrill. And both of those have also the feasibility projects as part of the asset management work that are supposed to be done at those particular facilities. So those are just the two that I think would be of concern. The others do have sufficient operating reserves to cover the deficits.
All right, any other questions on the report? Director Hills.
Thanks, Chair. The 6.03 number keeps catching my eye. So the confidence level in that, now we are 2 months past end of April. So the confidence, I'm not sure if you go back to check the confidence, but that's still up till April. That's a good solid number, 6%, just to kind of cover everything so far. So next year we already have a 6% across the board tax increase. Is that how you would frame that estimate of the 6%?
Yeah.
So to explain how that 6.03% was derived was essentially when we amended the financial plan for 2020, we used a lot of operating reserves to mitigate taxation. And we also deferred a lot of items to be included in next year. So those particular items were essentially the result of the amendment of the financial plan, as well as any future commitments into 2021. So we have a high confidence in those numbers unless there's any change in those decisions.
Any other questions? All right, let's move on to Annex C. Regional Solid Waste Service. And I think this will be GM Rosenboom. And Robin Cooper with us today.
Yeah, Robin is about to join us. I think she's watching YouTube. So if we give her a second, then she will pop up. But I can start off. This project, if you give me a sec, because okay, there we go. Thank you, Chair. As per the resolution 2030-520, staff reviewed the items identified in that resolution, as well as contemplated all service and programs within the regional solid waste function with the goal of reducing this year's deficit and or taxation and or other revenues required for 2021 without impacting the core services with respect to solid waste. For example, a one-time cancellation of the 2020 background trash bash due to the COVID would result in reducing the deficit, while individual and or organized groups can still clean up illegal dump sites and they will continue to be funded from the Good Samaritan program as per typical as any other year. Another example is the coupon program. For Area A, the discontinuation of the program will reduce the taxation, and for areas B, D, E, and F, the discontinuation of the coupon program would offset the increase to user fees that happen each year due to our annual increases of our contracts associated with the curbside collection. Each of the recommended service delivery changes for 2020 or 2021 will reduce the 2020 deficit and hence reduce the amount of revenue to be collected for the solid waste functions in 2021. Thank you, and staff are more than happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Directors. Director Ties?
Thank you, Chair. I have a question regarding the cancellation of the 2020 Back Road Trash Bash. It says here that we can still have people pick up stuff and use the Good Samaritan program. Wondering if anybody outside of the SCRD would organize a trash bash, say a community association or something like that. Would the Samaritan program be willing to take that much, or is it more of an individual effort kind of thing?
Robin?
Thanks for the question. Yes, the Good Samaritan program would fund community-hosted, trash bashes, and has through the Pender Harbor area every other year.
I know we have a group that comes and cleans up in Porpoise Bay, for example, and all of that is hauled under the Good Samaritan program. Director McMahon and then Director Lee.
Yeah, with coupons, I was wondering, do we know how many residents take advantage of the coupons that they get with their taxes?
Robin Remco?
I don't have the numbers handy, but it is something that we could run a report on and provide at a later date.
In addition to that, the numbers presented here are estimates based on what's actually was delivered at the landfills over the last several years. So maybe it's not reflective of the number of people, but it's definitely reflective of the amount of material being delivered to the landfill. And in general, it's very noticeable towards May, for example, at the Seashell landfill, that there is an increase in traffic at the landfill due to the coupon program.
Dr. Mann?
Yeah, so we're tracking the tonnage again, but not the number of users.
We don't have we have the data, but we don't have it at hand.
Okay, Director Lee and then Director Hiltz.
Thank you, Chair. I got 3 questions. Where is the 2020 scheduled to occur, the trash bash? I know we alternate areas, so.
Robin?
Thanks for the question. This year's Backroad Trash Bash was scheduled for the South Coast, so Roberts Creek, Elphinstone through Westhouse Sound, Port Millen.
Thank you. Can I?
Go ahead.
Can I ask the next question, Chair?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Nelson Island cleanup I was curious why it would just be Nelson that went to every other year.
Thank you for the question. I will start and Robin can. Based on when we were writing this report, Nelson was first added to the program last year. We never had it included in the Islands Cleanup program before. It was added last year at a cost of $30,000, and last year we had, I think, 15, 18 residents participating. This year, to date, and that information has been updated since this report was released. We are expecting about 40 people joining us so there's a little higher number of participants. The rationale for only proposing Nelson to be one in 2 years is because of the significant cost to go there. And based on last year's numbers, the relatively low amount of residents that were actually using the program.
So I heard you say there were 15 last year, but now 40 this year. That's what's being registered, and you're suggesting.
Yeah, last year I think it was 17, and this year we're getting to the 40.
Director Lee?
Yes, there was one run in 2019, but I'm not sure just how big that one was. But sounds like it's growing as they know it is happening. I'm kind of not in favor of canceling it. I do understand that it's just the one island and it's kind of a little bit on its own. But I think it is important to the residents. As you can see, it's growing, and they're starting to plan for it and organize themselves a little better every year. I'd hate to see it stop just as we get it going.
I don't think that's what the recommendation is saying. The recommendation is saying they would do it this year, but not next year. So they do it every other year.
Yeah, I know, but it's I'm kind of curious about the tonnage now that it's going. It's all $1 per ton to me, and hope if it's somewhat similar to the south in $1 per ton collected, then I think we should continue.
Currently, last year, I concur with you that last year was the first year the program was run. This year, we're seeing more uptake. That's information that's came to us since this report was released. We presented it because it is a significant amount that, based on last year's information, would have resulted in limited amount of residents impacted. The number is most likely higher this year.
Okay, so Director Lee, I'm going to go to Director Hiltz and we'll come back for your last question. Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. I got a comment and then a question. So the comment is about the community pickups, and they're in the West Howe Sound area. They tend to be more informal, neighbors getting together and trying to get out before Capilano does their roadside mowing, which takes all the cups and turns them into little tiny pieces rather than one big piece. There seems to be a bit of a concern about liability. You have volunteers walking out on the roads. These are kind of the more neighborhood rather than the back of the bush kind of pickups. And as far as I know, the people aren't necessarily using the Samaritan program, because for them it's we got a trailer, we throw everything in, and I'm just going, rather than dealing with the procedures of taking pictures and all this. So there's the upfront a preparation to use the Samaritan program, and then there is also the liability of putting people out on the roads with cars and stuff like that. So those are some of the things that prevent people from doing it. And then the question that I had is to GM Rosenblum, and And the comment about core services for solid waste. If you could characterize what the core services would be. Yeah, I kind of have a sense of that. I'm just kind of, what's your sense of the core services?
Thank you very much. I knew that when I was saying those words, I was triggering this question. I consider, staff consider the core services operating landfill and transfer station, and ensuring that recycling programs are run, and that curbside collection programs are in place where desired.
All right, Director McMahon and then Director Lee.
Yeah, one of the things that comes up in these discussions quite often is we speculate as to whether stopping this program or that program will result in an increase in illegal dumping in the backwoods. How do we measure that? Like, if we stop the coupon program, how do we measure how much illegal dumping is taking place so that we can see whether it's increasing or not?
You may want to take that one on.
I will try, and then maybe Robin, you go first, and I will go second.
Thanks for the question. I know we've had this discussion lately at the committee level, and it's anecdotal. So when there is illegal dumping, we as the SCRD promote to residents to contact the RAP line. So that's the Report All Poachers and Polluters. So we would be able to access that information. I'm sure the Conservation Service would share that local data with us. So we would have some data as to whether or not it has increased or decreased, but that would be relative to what is reported. So that there may be more dumping that isn't reported. So there's limitations with the data. So we would have some anecdotal idea.
Follow up, Director McMahon.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's some way that we can start collecting that data. Certainly ask the Conservation Service for it. But, you know, we're always wondering about impacts of programs, and it's difficult to make decisions when you don't have the data.
Director Lee and then Director Ties.
Thank you, Chair. Donna asked one of my questions, so now I've only got one more left. The recommendation number 5 talked about in terms of staff hours, service, and demand. And I didn't see any recommendations related to that. And my doggone it. My thoughts on that were looking into, well, cardboard bundling was on site was one of them, but I understand we're going to look after that later on here. But also the wood chipping, making chips at the site, and reducing our hauling costs and those kind of things, the bigger things that could make a difference by investing a little bit of capital and better utilizing the existing staff. Was that looked into and we couldn't find anything, or that's my question.
Thank you, Chair, for the question. The staff considered the recommendation in terms of optimizing operations. It's really based on operational hours and times and those kind of things. The operation itself, in terms of chippers, etc., was not actually discussed at staff level. It was considered, but we know that from practice that it's fair. A chipper is cost anywhere between $500,000 and $1 million, and based on my recollection from information we provided to the board last year. So if we would purchase one, and otherwise, I think we don't see any operational cost-effective measures that can be implemented that can actually reduce the cost overall. If we would find them, we would present them to you throughout the year because we will not wait or as part of a regular budget process. However, what I can commit to is as part of our preparation for 2021, we'll look at again if there's any operational improvements we could make that ultimately would result in cost savings, but we will take a look at it.
Follow up, Director Lee.
Yes, thank you. That sounds like a good idea. I know it's pretty hard when we got so many moving targets here with the South Coast and the North Coast wood and all that stuff, but somehow it seems to me we should be able to modernize our operations and save ourselves some money down the road. So it's a good idea to look at it once things settle down. I think we've got the all of the initiatives that are occurring right now and we're trying to implement. So it's probably something that needs to be done later. I was a little disappointed in the size of the savings. It's there's not much there that we're looking at.
Director Ties and then Director McMahon.
Chair, I have two questions. The first one is going back to the back road trash bash. If it's organized by somebody other than the SCRD, last year we got these great handouts that showed us where the trash was and sent us on our mission. Do you have a database that then somebody else could access or maybe forward? If somebody expresses interest, can you forward those files?
Robin?
Thanks for the question. Typically, a group or an individual comes to us saying that they found an illegal dump site and that they would like to clean it up. Should a group approach the SCRD saying, do we have some sites? Then we could contact the Conservation Officer Service and find out if they have any sites that they know of in their database through the RAP line. And we would be able to share that data, as well as we are familiar with some hotspots that we could direct folks to.
Okay, and second question, if I may, Chair.
Okay.
And that was around the delaying the food waste drop-off in Area A. I'm not quite sure I understand the rationale behind that. I mean, ultimately, we need to get food waste out of our landfill, and with the food waste pickup happening in the rest of the electoral areas beginning in Q4, it'd be nice to have Area A to kind of pull in line with that, with the drop-off option up there. So, and then the 27,000, apparently, just kind of if you want to talk about what the rationale is behind all that.
Robin Remco.
Thanks for the question. Again, as staff, we're reviewing the directive from the board with reviewing the programs and services. This is one of the items that could be delayed that would help reduce the deficit. So it's being brought forward for the committee's consideration.
So, sorry, that's just, so what you're saying basically is that we already have a tax increase. If we continue on with this and bring it in this year, the tax increase for next year will be greater because we have to cover this off. Is that correct?
This item would be funded out of to be established tipping fees, and we're not sure if the tipping fees we would collect this year would cover all the costs we would make this calendar year. So maybe over a larger time span they would be cost recovery, full cost recovery, because that should be the basis of tipping fees. But we would not be able to confirm if that would already be the case this year. So as a result, there is a risk that we would run a deficit in Q4 on this particular function. That would then need to be covered by taxation next year.
Okay, Director McMahon and then Director Lee.
I'm thinking about communications. I personally am not wedded to the coupon program, and I think that residents need to understand that our garbage is expensive. But I can see if next year rolls around and people do not get their programs, there will be a whole lot of screaming and yelling, "You didn't tell us that you were going to do this. We love our coupons. We want them back." So I think what we need to do is communicate that we are looking at discontinuing the program to find out whether the public is just like, they love it and they don't want to lose it. Is there a communications plan?
Thanks for the question. Should the committee and the board decide to discontinue the coupon program beyond the coupon that has already been issued? So the coupons that are out in the community or in Pender Harbors, they'll receive in August. So it's valid in September until May of next year. So any coupons would be valid until May of next year. And should the board decide to discontinue the coupon program, we would develop a communications plan and implement that as soon as possible to give folks notice. But their coupon that they have now is still valid until May of next year.
Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, the way I look at the report is we're all in this together and we all got to give up a little bit. That seems to be, that it's Director Lee talked about the big ticket items and on the chart on page 30, the contribution amounts are the big ticket items, right? Your $125,000 a year. And staff is not recommending that. It exposes the regional district to a liability, unfunded liability. My question is, when does the 2021 contribution have to be locked in? Like this goes into a reserve, we can't touch it, it stays there. When does the 2021 contribution have to be locked in?
Ina, did you want to maybe address that piece?
So, I mean, this is, I think a more holistic review needs to be done for that, just as to what the impacts would be. But it's part of budget. So if this year the board decided not to contribute the amount that is budgeted and they wanted to make an amendment, they could make some amendments to that. But then it would, I think it's shown here that we do have some financial commitments for stage H of the closure, and we don't actually have enough funds to cover that. So that would be the discussion piece in trying for the board to decide what they'd like to do with that.
Director Lee.
Yes. I noticed there was on 30, it was a suggestion to terminate the Good Samaritan program. And boy, I wouldn't like to see that at all. Area A has been quite aggressive with the Good Samaritan program, and it funds the fact that we run a trash bash every year, whether it's our turn or not. And I think that's what Director Tease is talking about, is to organize a community group to run the trash bash every year. And I do know that I'm fairly confident that the group that runs the every year trash bash in Pender here would be very happy to work with any other community group to explain how they do it and how it works. And it's actually quite fun. For the groups, they go around and do it, and they have a luncheon afterwards that's provided by other not-for-profits for free, and it's quite a community event, and it's very successful. I think if we were all doing that, we might not have to worry about the 2020 every year and just go with the Good Samaritan. It's a good way of getting it done. So that's my comments on that one. I'm also not in favor of delaying Area A in the food waste pickup. Our focus has got to be on keeping our dump going as long as we can. And if I'm sure we have enough reserves to carry us through until we do increase the tipping fees if that's required, and avoid the taxation component. It seems to me we should be able to do that if I understand the way it works correct. So I wouldn't mind comments on that last part.
Rosenboom?
The reserves for this function, I don't have them at hand, are limited.
Tina has that.
Well, we've just, as part of the Seashell landfill mitigation, we actually have fully committed. So we actually don't have any more reserves available.
Thank you. So does that mean if this goes into deficit, we will actually be pre-spending 2021 to put this program into place in 2020?
Sorry, potentially, yes. When I say potentially, I mean it's just how is the whole budget going to balance? We'd have to review that.
Right. Okay, Director Lee, follow up, and then Director McMahon.
Well, if if that amount of money is putting us in financial difficulty, we're in pretty bad shape here, because I think we must have ate up our reserves on the on some other aspect of this thing. Perhaps we need to consider the tipping fee increase right away. How are we going to cover anything if we have one more little minor misstep here? It sounds like we've made a little faux pas somewhere here.
I think what Tina just said was that we used our reserves because of the issues we're having at the landfill. So we've committed those funds to cover off the mitigation that has to happen up there. Otherwise, we would have had some reserves to be able to cover off some of these other programs. Director McMahon.
Yes, I'm just going to say with respect to Area A, you know, the curbside food waste pickup will start in my area in October. So delaying till 2021 is only actually a 3-month delay. The report says it would start January 1st, 2021, which I hope it could. So, you know, it's not completely desirable, but it's not like a year's delay.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? So there are some recommendations that staff have put forward on page 29. And it sounds like we may like to make some changes to that. Director McMahon?
I'm willing to move the recommendations on page 29.
Right, is there a seconder? Oh, GM Rosenboom first. Okay, seconded, GM Rosenboom, and then we'll go to Director Lee.
Thank you. In terms of voting, if there's voting going to take place, staff realized that the voting on the area B, D, E, and F coupon is only for the rural areas and not for all directors, because that's funded out of 355, and it will reduce the user fee and not the taxation. Thank you.
So we should do this in 2 parts, is what you're saying. Vote for there's the first 3, and the last one would be all, and then the area A coupon and area B, D, E, and F coupon would be voted on by no.
Area A coupon is paid off by taxation, so it's all directors, and it's only area B, D, and F coupon that would need to be separate, and would need a separate financial plan amendment recommendation.
Okay. So let's do, Director Lee, let's do your question, and then we will rejig this recommendation.
Yeah, when we consider rejigging the recommendation, I would suggest that we eliminate the Nelson Island cleanup proposal and revisit it after we know exactly how successful 2020 was and what the cost per ton is. We could revisit it later on this year, easy enough. And we'd have more information on that part of it.
Okay. Director McMahon.
Yeah, I'm happy to withdraw my motion, except I don't think I can. So rescue me here, Chair.
Sherry, how would you like us to do this?
So have you moved this block and has it been seconded?
Yes.
Okay.
We could vote on each line individually, could we not? Or vote on some of them individually?
I would recommend you deal with each one individually. That might be cleaner.
Okay.
So because it's been moved and seconded, it might be best to just call the vote. Everybody lets it fail because it's already on the floor, and then go back and do each one separately.
Yes. Agreed.
We could do that, except we have a recommendation on the floor right now that some may go forward and some may not at this point if we do them individually and have them voting separately. The only one that we have to have separate voting on is the one for area B, D, E, and F at the coupon program. We could vote on each one of the recommendations inside of this individually as it is on the floor. Director Lee?
Sorry, I was just listening to what was happening here. I was premature.
Okay, so if we vote on each one of these individually, we would vote on the 2020 backyard trash bash be canceled, and we'd take a vote.
But right now we have it moved and seconded for all of those recommendations are on the floor right now as a motion.
Yes, that's right. And according to our corporate officer, if we can vote on them each individually, we're okay to go forward.
Procedurally though, procedurally, right now we're moving everything as a block forward. So we either need to amend this motion or we need to let it vote on it as it is, either let it fail and then go back and do it separately.
Corporate officer?
So Chair, thank you. Procedurally, the motion was moved as a full block, and the committee may wish to vote and defeat it. That's one way to dispose of it. Or you could postpone it indefinitely, and you won't have to vote on it. And you can then attend to each resolution individually. That would be procedurally correct.
Sorry, so you're saying we either defeat the whole block or
move to postpone it indefinitely, and then it goes away and it never comes back again.
Right.
And then you can separately divide the recommendations and vote on each one individually.
Right. Because if we, so question, this is again procedure, if we defeat it as written, we cannot bring it back as written individually and vote on it?
Yes, you can. The issue is there is a motion that is on the floor pending that has been seconded. So we have to somehow procedurally get that off the books. We have to deal with it by either voting on it to so that it fails, yes, or you can make a motion to postpone it indefinitely.
Can we not make a motion to vote on each one of the parts of the recommendation individually?
Once you've disposed of the current motion that's pending on the floor, yes.
Okay. So is everybody clear what we have to do? So if we want to vote on them individually, we have to actually defeat the motion that's on the floor and then bring back a separate motion. Okay. So let's vote on the motion on the floor. All those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you. Okay, so that one's gone. So now we'd like a recommendation. We'd like to do each one individually. Is that correct? Yes, Tara.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, for these ones, also the 2020 financial plan be amended accordingly will be included in each one, just So when you're voting on them, that's part of that same motion.
Okay, thank you. So would someone like to make a recommendation about the back road trash bash? Director Hilt.
Thanks, Chair. Recommendation that the trash bash be canceled and further that the 2020 financial plan be amended accordingly.
And a seconder for that recommendation. Seconded. All those in favor? Thank you. And Area A food drop-off. I'd like to deal with that one. Director McMahon.
Yeah, I'm willing to make that motion cautiously.
Is there a seconder? Seconded. Any further discussion on that one? All those in favor? Any opposed? And would you like that recorded? Okay, so it's passed, but 3 in opposition. The third one, that the Nelson Island cleanup be reduced to every other year service. So no service in 2021. Director Lee, did you want to make an alternate recommendation for that one?
Yes, I'd like to make an alternate recommendation that after the 2020 island cleanup is complete and we understand the volume collected, that we revisit this to determine whether we should go ahead with the 2020 Nelson Island cleanup.
2021 Nelson Island, okay. Is there a seconder for that recommendation? Seconded. Any further comments or questions, discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. And a recommendation about Area A coupon program. Director Lee.
I'd like to make a motion that the Area A coupon program be discontinued and further that the 2024 financial plan be amended accordingly.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded. All those in favor? Thank you. And then this one, next one is for Area B, D, E, and F. So that would be those areas only. Look for someone to move a recommendation. Moved. Seconded. All those in favor? Thank you. Dr. Hiltz.
Is it clarified enough? We didn't actually verbalize the recommendation. It was kind of an implicit one to Tara. So it did. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any further comments or questions on this report? Next. Community recreation facilities. Annex D. And I think we're going to have GM Hall do an introduction, and then we are going to have, I thought I saw him here. He was here. I think he left us.
Thank you, Chair. We do have Manager Graham Dawn with us as well. And before Manager Dawn speaks, I'd like to offer a few points of context for the report and these are points that staff considered during preparation. And thank you to the committee for the opportunity to share. So community recreation services may be the most impacted SCRD service in terms of impacts from COVID-19. And that's true financially now, but it's also true in terms of what the new normal will look like, at least for a while. Secondly, there are a great number of unknowns that play into forecasting, and the CFO made a remark on this earlier. Chief among them for recreation is the community's demand for service, which could change over time. For example, if a second wave emerges. And thirdly, based on this uncertainty, staff have been conservative with revenue projections and gentle with expenditure reductions in terms of the information that's in front of the committee today. And fourth, although the board's directive and question was about facility level financial implications, because the community recreation services run as one business, there are challenges to doing a complete breakdown of revenues and expenditures by facilities. Nonetheless, staff have attempted to do this on all budget components where data makes it possible. And finally, implicit in the report is that our staff and our whole recreation service values, adheres to, and strives to respond to advice from our public health officials. And this is woven into the report in two ways. Firstly, the approach that's suggested is careful, staged, and comprehensive. It considers time for training, having complete plans in place, and has a focus on being nimble and able to improve our operations as we learn or new public health direction is provided. And then also, from another perspective, simultaneously hearing and responding to public health advice about the importance of safe local physical and social recreation, and the importance of that to individual well-being and community connectedness. So thank you again for allowing me to share that, and now I'll ask Manager Dawn to speak to the content of the report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, GM Hall. Good morning, everybody. So on March 17th, all recreation facilities were closed due to the pandemic. Following board direction from the meeting on June 11th, staff began compiling information to report back on the costs associated with operating all 4 recreation facilities and the implications of delaying reopening. From this information, staff separated recreation restart options into 3 service levels: service level 0, service level 1, and service level 2. Service level 0 represents the base facility costs to keep each facility closed through to the end of 2020. Service level 1 represents a 30% revenue projection based on figures from 2019 and wouldn't include any structured classes or programming. Service level 2 represents a 50% revenue projection, again based on figures from 2019, and would include structured classes and programming with maximum participants numbers permitted under COVID-19 operating requirements. So based on these projections for revenue and expenses and taking into account community health, social and economic benefits of recreation services, staff recommend opening the Gibsons and Area Community Center and the Seashell Aquatic Center at service level 2, beginning with ice available on or about August 4th at GAC and gradually opening other amenities as it becomes possible to do so. It is important to note that in order to have ice in at GAC on or about August 4th, staff will need to receive this direction today. Other openings are staged, and while there are lead times involved, and certainly community demand, there are not specific scheduling milestones, as is the case with ice installation. In the report, you'll notice that there is currently a shortfall of just over $15,000 for August ice. The ice allocation policy states that ice is only provided when variable costs are covered. However, staff have built these ice provision costs into August and the scenarios described above. In addition to staff recommendation to reopen GAC and SAC at service level 2, staff also recommend that the Sunshine Coast Arena be reopened in October based on user demand. While developing this report, staff also took into consideration a number of other aspects and scenarios. These including the Chinook Swim Club's letter requesting a reduction in lane fees and also increased fees associated with online registration in our online registering platform. In regards to the Chinook Swim Club letter, staff recommend a collaborative partnership approach to work with the swim club to help maximize the value received per booking through creative scheduling and also a bulk booking approach. In regards to increased registration fees, anticipated to be approximately $2 a transaction, staff are currently reviewing strategies to address these fees and will report back at a future committee. Finally, staff recognize that there is a real potential for a significant year-end deficit for this recreation service. This deficit, if addressed solely through future taxation, would be a significant burden on taxpayers. Staff are confident the strategies to both reduce the deficit through expenditure reduction and the need for taxation through, for example, a one-time reallocation of capital plan funding, which is currently set at $750,000 per year, can reduce the impacts of taxation. Further report back on these strategies is the next step and one that staff can work on quickly so that further decisions on service levels could potentially be made in September or early October. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Thank you. Directors. Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, page 41, the last line, the 1.06 million. I'm just looking for the formula that adds up to all to the 1.6 million. Or sorry, 1.06. 1.06 million.
Who would like to answer that one? GM Hall.
Thank you, Chair. So that figure is comprised of the 4 highlighted facility level deficits that are identified in the table on page 41, as well as the aggregate service level costs through the end of the year, which I'm looking to identify where that shows up in the report, but they are mentioned separately. Thank you.
Director Ties and Director McMahon.
Thank you, Chair. Overall, I'm fairly uncomfortable with potentially raising next year's property taxes by 5% for 4 months of recreation. Without some kind of without some kind of opportunity for the community to submit feedback. So so that kind of speaks to being having to make the decision today at board. I don't think that's a fair thing to do. There's one more special board meeting on the 30th. I think that is the earliest time I'd be willing to vote on that. And that would also mean that the ice would probably not go in until in September in GAC, which I'd also be okay with because August is the hottest month, energy expenditures would be the highest, and the ice quality wouldn't be all that great anyway. Other comments I have is that I think there's some opportunity with using the GAC ice more than in past years because schools are closed, and so maybe during the daytime the usage of the ice could be higher. Because some teams may be able to practice during what would otherwise be school time. And then, and I think having GAC run longer hours before opening up Sunshine Coast Arena would also be able to save us some dollars potentially, maybe not, I don't know. But even though the Sunshine Coast Arena has nicer ice and nicer change rooms, in my opinion, I think I'd be more in favor of trying to keep that facility closed for the rest of the year and trying to maximize GAC as much as possible. Those are my comments for now.
Thank you. Director McMahon.
Yeah, I have a lot of people in the community asking me, how is it that it can be more expensive to keep our recreation facilities closed than it is to keep them open? Like we're losing a bunch of money even though it's closed. And we seem to have an awful lot of staff still on the payroll even though the facility is closed. Can staff provide some more insight?
Thank you for the question, Chair. I'm not quite sure where to start with that. It's not, I don't believe it's more expensive to keep the facilities closed than to operate them. As the table on page 41 identifies, there are significant overhead costs with recreation for a whole variety of reasons. Keeping facilities safe and secure, including staffed for ice plants, per Technical Safety BC and WorkSafe regulations, does bring with it a cost. And the community recreation service does support a number of other services. So through our recreation facilities, we do things like book our community halls. And so that's part of the reason that there are a number of staff still working in recreation. But overall, our staff count is down significantly and I believe that the exact numbers were shared with directors. But we have cut this service back to a skeleton crew to keep things safe and secure and ensure that we're meeting regulations and providing just enough service to keep things running. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Directors. Director Hills.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I keep thinking I have a debt clock in front of me here. So 6% to August 30th, another 5% makes 11%, plus some unknowns. So does this mean that we're already looking at 11+% across the board tax increase for 2021? Is this kind of what the figures are showing us?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that would be some of the projections right now. So yes, we know we're at least at 6%. If the deficits stayed where they are today, we would probably need an additional 2 to 3%. Just for the recreation restart, if we went to the highest level, that would be upwards of 5% more. We also have a lot of pending decisions. So transit was one of them. We also have the solid waste related items that are still to be decided. So yes, we are in the 11 to 13% range if those decisions were made.
You have a follow-up, Director Hiltz?
13, I'm going 13 plus, kind of. That would be, 13 is kind of on the conservative side, maybe. So I guess this is something that has been talked around the board table of how we incrementally move things forward over the year. And when we come to the end, like I'm going to say last year, and we had the 13%. And so I lose context of how the incremental decisions lead up to the final amount. So it does help, but it helps with the numbers, doesn't help with the decision. Thanks.
Thank you. Director McMahon, Director Kroll, and then I'm going to put myself on the list.
Yeah, I have a lot of concerns around recreation. One of them is that we're very likely to have a second wave of COVID in the fall. So we could put all these plans in place and then end up having to close the recreation facilities again at relatively short notice, which presumably also, costs us some money, because you don't just turn around and change everything suddenly without incurring costs. As we all know, there were a lot of people upset about tax and particularly utility bill increases this year. A lot of the people in Elphinstone are in tight financial circumstances in the best of times. We have a lot of residents who work at low-paid jobs or have precarious employment or are on small pensions. And tax increases hit them very hard. I'm willing to stand up and take the flak for tax increases for critical services that really provide tremendous benefit to the whole community, such as fire protection and water. But to impose significant tax increases for figure skating and swim meets is a harder sell. Where I come from, those are nice to have, but they're not essential. And we are already facing very big bills for water and for the garbage dump, including a bunch of expenses that we didn't see coming, which are in the $1 million range. And, you know, it's hard for me to look at. I think we have never sat down and had the conversation about whether a community of 30,000 people can afford 3 swimming pools and 2 ice rinks. It's difficult. So I'm having a hard time with this. Gotta say, I'm inclined to keep the facilities closed until the end of the year, until at least we see where the COVID situation is going.
Sorry, Director Kroll.
Thank you, Chair. You know, I have to agree with Director Ties and Director McMahon. Director McMahon pretty well took away what I wanted to say, but that's okay. She said it well, so I'll just say ditto. It is difficult, and I think you know, when we look at the percentage of our overall budget which is dedicated to recreation, and you know, obviously there is a certain amount of community support about being taxed at what is in excess of 40% of our budget for recreation. But, you know, suddenly to be hit with these increases when everyone, I think, is feeling the pinch, it is difficult. I got the second term of my home insurance this week, and I was flabbergasted the amount it has gone up because of this, that, and the other thing. And I'm sure they're going to say it's COVID related, but you know, that aside, it's $400 more than I had planned on spending for the second half of the year. So I think we really do need to seek some public input. I realize it's going to impact with that sort of arbitrary August 4th deadline, but I think we do need further public engagement. It's a huge hit that's potentially coming as all these things get compounded. So I certainly back the direction that Director Ties and Director McMahon are suggesting, and I'm going to just, you know, add my 2 cents that we need more public input on it.
Thank you. I did the calculations in here as well, and on page, sorry, other mouse, on page 36, it gives us what the costs are to keep the facilities closed August through December. So we're looking at $132,500 just to keep them, you know, safe and secure and managing all of the systems in there so that they're ready to be in a position to open should we decide to do that. We have been hearing about other communities around the province. Was it Prince George, I think, said they're not opening their arenas this year. They're not going to because of the cost. So we're looking at $132,500 by keeping them closed. Opening them potentially could have us $1 million deficit, because we don't know. We don't know what the community's wishes are here. Are they actually going to come and use these facilities? We do know that we've got, you know, the skaters who are looking at coming and using, you know, the ice surfaces, but we don't know about the rest of it. We don't know if people are going to come and use our weight rooms. Our deficit could be potentially higher. Staff have been conservative in their estimates, but those might still be not as conservative as what the community positioning will show us. So I'm more in line to Director Ties say, let's take this conversation. It gives us a couple of weeks. It's not a long time, actually a week, to get out to the community and see what they say. Are they comfortable enough to come and actually use these facilities or not? And are they comfortable enough to use the facilities and pay the extra 5%, the potentially 5% minimum that could cost to actually have them operational? So I'm not comfortable making a decision on this today either. Director Pratt, Director Kroll.
Thank you. I'd agree with the comfort level. I'm not, it's a tough one right now, especially as we're watching our COVID numbers rise in the province currently. And even the provincial health order regarding restaurants and pubs changed yesterday to input more restrictions. And I think these are important things that we need to consider because a lot of this is happening from the reopening and a lot of around Canada Day, and we're seeing that uptick. And I'm very cautious about doing this, making a decision that would later today that when we're looking at potentially 13% without a lot of more infrastructure implications that those necessities. And I know how incredibly important recreation is to our community. But we're in an anomaly. This is an anomaly. I'll use the word unprecedented, unparalleled situation right now. And it's requiring us to take a step back and look at everything and complete that full needs versus wants analysis. So I'm leaning with the other directors on this right now.
Director Toth and Director McMahon. Sorry, Director Kroll, Toth, and McMahon.
Thank you, Chair. Sort of further to this, I don't know, is there an opportunity where, like the swimming teams, the hockey teams, the ice users, the pool users, whether corporate sponsorship might be willing to step up to sort of help offset the deficits? Do we have a capacity to accept sponsorship in that area?
Tina?
There are a couple of ways we could facilitate that. I would leave it to the recreation folks to see if that's even been discussed in the past.
DM Hall, do you want to weigh in on that one?
Only to say that nothing is off the table, and staff are open to and have always been open to creative ways to increase the financial sustainability of our services or expand access to recreation for any of our patron groups, but youth particularly. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Toth and Director McMahon.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I really struggle with this. First of all, the chart at the bottom of page 41 shows the deficits under all of the options for all of the facilities in one spot, so it's nice and easy to reference. I really struggle with this. I've got a daughter. She has friends. They've missed the pool. They've missed not being able to go hang out there this summer. But they're old enough now that they can go swim in the ocean safely, even by themselves or as a small group. But a lot of people aren't in that same position where they can either take their children to the ocean or trust their children to go to the ocean safely. I think that if we try and rush the feedback, though, we're only going to hear from the organized clubs if we try and do this in 1 week. I think it's prudent for us and staff to take the whole month of August to solicit feedback from the wider community, both about the usage of the facilities and also the implications on the tax base. And if it means that we open our facilities towards the end of September instead, then so be it. I mean, these are unprecedented times. The organizations are going to have to just accept that that's the way it is. It might be nice that Soyuz is planning to reopen and wherever is open already. But every community is going to be different, and every community is going to be getting through this differently. And so I would support putting this off a little longer.
Director McMahon.
Interesting thoughts. Staff kindly provided a spreadsheet about the impact to taxation. I confess that I'm struggling with it. So when we have this conversation with the community, it would be very helpful for me to know in a dollar amount what a 5% tax increase is in Area E for the average value of property. Then we can, because 5% is hard for people to, like, what does that mean exactly? But if you say on the average value property for this area, that would represent $200, then that's an amount that people can relate to. So when we're communicating, that would be really helpful.
Tina, did you want to weigh in there now?
Well, I think that, you know, the average is quite subjective depending on what area. So if you're speaking of some of the areas up in Area A, you can have a large variation. So that's why staff have provided a couple of realistic scenarios. So an average home, generally most of Sunshine Coast in the lower average would be about $250,000. And what's really important to note for community recreation is that people are only taxed for the improvements of their home. So land is not included. It's just the value of your improvements. So average improvements anywhere between, if the deficit ended up being in the neighborhood of $1 million and you have improvements that are about $250,000, that would be approximately $50 per person per household. And if you had somewhere that had improvements of $750,000, that would be about $150. So that would be the highest range. And anything below that, of course, anywhere from, you know, approximately $12 per person to that $150 range, just depending on where we land for this particular deficit.
Okay. So what is the committee's wish here? We have a recommendation on page 33. Doesn't look like there's any appetite to move the recommendations as presented. So what would you like to move instead? Director Kroll.
I'm just wondering what the capacity is of staff between now and our next board meeting to communicate sort of these implications to the community.
I'll take a stab at that. Thank you for the question, Chair. I would have to have a bit of a discussion with the senior leadership team. The very short answer is constrained. Our ability to have meaningful public engagement on something like this in a 1 week time would be constrained, but we could certainly put our heads together and see what we might be able to do if it's something like an online survey, if that's possible, or some way to help to provide some information to the public that could solicit feedback. We could also look at potentially putting an FAQ together for board members that are fielding calls or reaching out to folks as well. So there's something we could do. I don't know exactly what it would look like right now.
Okay, Director McMahon.
Yeah, color me skeptical for trying to do an outreach in 1 week from a dead start. And I know that the senior management team is sitting around with nothing to do. So they would appreciate us throwing a wild one like that at them. I don't think it's feasible. I'm at the risk of mucking up a motion again, like I did the last one. I would be willing to move that we plan to leave the recreation facilities closed until the end of this year.
Is there a seconder for that recommendation? Doesn't look like you're going to get a seconder. Right? No, good try. Director Ties?
Thank you. No, I'm not going to second that, but I would move some of these recommendations. I do see a need for recreation, and I do see that the community wants something for the 40% that they're already paying for their property taxes right now. But I do think that I would like to keep the Sunshine Coast Arena staying dry until the end of the year. And I would also, and other than that, I'd be willing to move those recommendations as long as maybe actually, there was the Gibson's and Area Community Center be reopened at service level 2 starting in September. And then I would also move that these recommendations either be moved to the board meeting on the 30th or even September, the first one in September, which I'd be happy. That would give ample time for feedback. And it would mean that, some of these openings might be a little bit delayed, but I think we need to hear from the community on this.
So I just want to get clear on your recommendation. You're saying for number 1, the Gibson's and Area Community Center be reopened at service level 2 effective September 1st. Well, it'll be September 2nd, the holiday.
Yeah.
Okay. Seashell Aquatic Center and that be revisited in September at a board meeting, and that the Sunshine Coast Arena and the Gibson's and District Aquatic Facility remain closed through to the end of 2020.
That's my recommendation right now, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, closed for Seashell, for the Seashell Community Arena would be, or the Sunshine Coast Arena would be dry floor use till the end of the year. I don't see why we would call it closed. I just want to clarify that we would want the dry floor users to keep using it until the end of the year.
So be reopened, but for dry floor use only.
Yeah.
Until the end of the year, and that be revisited. Okay. Is there a seconder for the recommendation on the floor? Director Toth. Okay, so it's on the floor. So, so we'll see where it goes. Okay, so what we've got is that the Gibson's and Area Community Center be reopened at service level 2 effective September 2nd, so the day after the holiday. That the Sunshine Coast Arena be reopened for dry floor use only effective September, Director Ties? Okay. And that the Seashell Aquatic Center and the Gibson's, the Seashell Aquatic Center reopening be revisited at the beginning of September, and that the Gibson's and District Aquatic Facility remain closed through to the end of 2020. All right, so I've got Director Kroll and Director Toth.
Thank you, Chair. I certainly agree with the direction we're going in, and just perhaps put a caveat on it that staff assess the financial implications of this, get out their Ouija board and see what they can do, and that we also consider public input with respect to this decision. We can always revisit something, but I think we need to be prudent with trying to, get a handle on some of these looming percentages, regardless whether it's $12 or $50 or $100 per household. It's an increase, and we've got all sorts of other stuff that we took out of our bold budget earlier this year, and there's bound to be people wanting some of that stuff revisited. So I think we're moving in the right direction here and I'm prepared to support it.
So you've indicated two other pieces that staff come back with implications of moving forward as directed at this point, and that they identify appropriate public engagement opportunities. Would you like to make an amendment to add that to the recommendation?
Yes.
Okay, is there a seconder for that? Seconded, all right, thank you. So speaking to the amendment first, Director Toth? No, okay. So let's, all those in favor of the amendment first. Thank you, all right. So we have an amended motion on the floor. Director Toth, would you like to speak to the amended motion?
Thank you, Chair. Actually, it's 2 points of clarification that I want. You mentioned September 2nd in there. September 2nd is actually not the day after Labor Day. The day after Labor Day is September the 8th.
All right.
So I don't know if the intention here is September the 1st or the day after Labor Day. And I would look for clarification from perhaps Director Ties or yourself, Chair. And then the second comment I had, there was a date referenced with the Sunshine Coast, or the arena, which was not part of the original motion made or seconded. So I just wanted to clarify if that was an amendment as well.
Okay, Director Ties, what would you like to have your motion say? Or do we want to go to staff and see what staff suggests for that?
Yeah, maybe see what staff suggests.
Okay. Staff, pick a date. September something.
Thank you for the question, Chair. Difficult, as there would be different financial impact. Difficult for staff to recommend a date given there are different financial impacts, and the timing does have some. The timing for restart does have some impact on the ability to gather public input and then incorporate that into our go forward. I will say that well, operationally, either date could be achieved. More time is never a bad thing when we're talking about slow, steady, and safe. Thank you.
Back to you, Director Ties.
All right, let's go with September 8th.
September 8th. That would be for Gibson's and Area Community Center and the Sunshine Coast Arena, correct?
Correct.
All right. Thank you, Director Toth. Director McMahon, Director Hiltz.
Sorry, I was just going to point out that this will be coming to the board, so we have an opportunity to revisit the date. Because I actually was going to suggest that we simply say September and then have staff suggest, you know, the most workable date in September. But either way, I think we've got an opportunity to revisit the precise date that we're looking at here.
Okay, thank you. Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I am generally supportive of kind of the mix and match that we're doing to kind of lower that. I did hear that there was an opportunity to defer this motion to the 30th. And the reason I'm wondering about whether Director Ties would be interested in that was to have a little bit more consideration is I think the public is going to say to me, we elected you to make this decision for us. So meaningful discussion in a week. So I personally would like to have a little bit of more time to think about this, to see what the implications are. Because the week, as far as the decisions of delaying a week, would put the ice off, putting ice in. That seems to be the most significant operational decision. But there's some discussion about numbers and what these numbers would actually do. So will the intentions of this actually get what we want? And I think what we're trying to get is some kind of a projected deficit less than 5% by the end of the year, while providing some benefits to the community for what they're paying for. So reluctant to kind of move this through today. And is there options to kind of buy us a week, reassemble, clean up the language, and present it later? That's my kind of question. And as a comment, is a meaningful dialogue in a week or even a month? What the public tells me, you're the guy, we're not sitting at the table, you raise your hand, and you, right? You wear it, not us. You wear it. This is a service level decision. So that would be, can we defer it for till the 30th? We have a scheduled meeting. Is that possible? Kind of round everything up, package it, and make it coherent.
Okay. I'm going to go to Sherry first about that. So we have a motion on the floor. Could this be deferred at this point to the July 30th meeting?
So you have just adopted an amendment to the motion. Yes. Are you talking about referring that to the September 30th special cast meeting, for example?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So
and you would add another and that.
Yes.
Just a point of clarification. Sherry, you said September 30th. You meant July 30th?
July 30th. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So we've got Director Toth.
Thank you, Chair. All I was going to say was that because this is just a committee meeting, these still do have to go forward to board as recommendations where we can debate and discuss and even change them at board.
Director McMahon.
Yes, what Director Toth said. This motion does not, I think the thought had been that we would refer it to this afternoon's board meeting, but it's not in the motion. We're not doing that. So the next available board meeting would be July 30th. So we can revisit this motion at that time, and that's good with me.
Director Toth?
Here, let me throw it in as an amendment and that these recommendations be forwarded to the July 30th special board meeting.
Is there a seconder? Seconded for that. All those in favor of that, the amendment? Thank you. All right, so now we have a long motion that is going to come back to the July 30th special board meeting. Director Pratt.
Can we have Tara repeat it, please, so we have clarity on what exactly we're voting on, seeing as it looks like we've reached the end of the speakers list.
Thank you. Tara.
Thank you, Chair. That the community recreation facilities be restarted as follows. Gibson's and Area Community Center be reopened at service level 2, full opening during the pandemic, September 8th through December 20th, while maintaining all of the local health authorities and provincial governing bodies guidelines with limited instructor-led programming. Seashell Aquatic Center opening be revisited at September 2020 Planning and Community Development Committee meeting. Sunshine Coast Arena be reopened for dry floor use only September 8th through December 2020. Gibson's and District Aquatic Facility remain closed at service level 0 through the end of 2020. And that staff communicate implications and obtain public feedback on opening options, and that this recommendation be forwarded to the July 30th board meeting.
Dr. Pratt.
I'm wondering if we can, I don't know how many times we're going to be able to amend this, but changing the September 8th date to just September to allow for some flexibility with staff. And I'd look to the corporate officer, because I know we've already amended this motion twice, whether or not we can continue to amend.
That's fine.
Okay, then I would like to make that as an amendment that it be September 2020 rather than September 8th, 2020 for both of the September dates that are in that motion.
Is there a seconder for that amendment? Okay, that's seconded. I'd like to go to staff for implications of that, because at some point we're going to have to come up with a date. Does that give you?
there may be other staff that will weigh in on this as well. I think one of the things I'd be curious about in terms of the motion as worded is what is the board looking for from staff between now and the 30th of July in terms of additional staff work to be presented. I've heard that there's some additional financial analysis potentially and a bit of a financial analysis on the implications and potential changes in service levels of the motion as amended. And then in the motion as amended, there's some potential direction to staff on public engagement. Is the intention that staff would identify what meaningful and appropriate public engagement opportunities there might be between now and when the arena's open, as in between now and say September, or are we looking to try to do something between now and the 30th?
This actually won't be adopted until the 30th.
Yes. Okay.
So the implications of that are that there is no work for staff to do between now and the 30th.
So not even the additional financial analysis.
The way the motion is read currently, yes.
Okay.
Because it won't actually come to the board and be adopted until the 30th.
Okay. Thank you.
Director Ties, Director Toth, Director Hiltz, and Director McMahon.
I'm wondering about item number 2, the Seashell Aquatic Center. The original motion was to be reopened at service level 2. Now it's not until that decision will be made in September. I'm wondering if staff is okay with that, and how long would the delay be of between us saying yes, go ahead, and it actually being able to open its doors?
Yeah.
Thank you for the question. I may ask my team to pipe in if I miss anything here, but operationally, staff are prepared to action board direction, whatever that board direction is. Lead time for heating and balancing and getting the facility ready, at least a week, and there would be some staff training and scheduling and preparation that might push that up to as much as 3 weeks. As we get closer to restart, you know, whether that's the beginning of September or another time in the fourth quarter or 2021, staff are taking steps to take care of anything that we can ahead of time, getting our engineered barriers in place, getting signage ready to try to reduce that lead time so that we are as nimble as we can. Thank you.
So follow up, I would maybe amend. Well, I guess we have an amendment on the floor, don't we? So we would need to vote on that first, but I might want to amend that one then to actually coincide with the opening dates of the other ones.
Okay, so at this point, we're speaking to the amendment to change the date to September rather than September 8th. Are we speaking to the amendment? It's on the floor. Okay, Director Toth.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I think keeping a hard date is a good plan. This tells the community this is when we're looking at having these facilities open. This is when you can plan for your programming around. We had a delegation at PCD who was, you know, that was concerned about not having a fixed date to be able to plan their programming around. And I think September 8th gives them that date. So I think changing it to September sometime is going to ruin future planning for programs.
Thank you. Director McMahon.
Yes, I agree with Director Toth. The hard date makes more sense. It's easier for staff planning, and we should have the hard date for both facilities, the Gibson's Rec Center and the Seashell Pool.
Thank you. Director Hiltz and then Director Pratt.
Yeah, I agree with the hard date. It removes increases the level of certainty. But afterwards, I would like to speak to kind of what CAO McKinley said about some financial analysis. I would like to, after we deal with this piece, move a motion to ask staff to bring some of that updated information back. So,
thank you, Director Pratt.
Thank you, and I understand what everyone is saying regarding having a hard date in September. My concern is in for adding the date, just saying in September is giving staff a hard date when they haven't been able to fully look at it. So we're doing it on the fly, whereas they've had an opportunity to plan for other dates in preparing these reports for us, and we've now landing a hard date on them on the fly. That was my concern, for just allowing some flexibility for staff with just putting in September. So I'm okay if staff is okay with a hard date of September 8th. But I'd look to GM Hall for some advice on that, and then I'm happy to have that date die on this amendment.
GM Hall.
Thank you, Chair. Just in thinking or rethinking my rather wishy-washy answer a moment ago, the two other factors that that staff would add into the mix, and maybe this can be read as staff's advice to have just a September opening, would be because we have reduced our staff complement so much, our ability to open and hit a target date will depend on our ability to recall staff, and with unknown factors like the status of childcare and school on the coast, that will have a big implication for our staff team. And the other is that by keeping it to September, it gives the organization an opportunity to stage the opening and have facilities open on even slightly different days that could contribute to that slow, steady, and safe approach. Thank you.
So I have to ask a question counter to actually what you just said. If we were looking at currently in the recommendations to reopen at service level 2 as of August 4th, how does pushing it back a month make it more difficult to do that? Are the plans, the plans were looking at ramping up to open in a few weeks, and we're actually pushing that back, giving you additional time.
Thank you, Chair. Fair comment. I guess when I was saying that, I was thinking also about our aquatic facilities, and that we do have another report on this agenda for our other recreation service in Pender Harbor, which has an early September date included.
Okay. All right, seeing nobody else, now I'm conflicted. Seeing nobody else weighing in on the amendment to the motion, I'm going to call the question on changing the date from September 8th to September. All those in favor? All right. Any opposed? One opposed. Would you like that recorded? Thank you. All right, so now we have a motion on the floor. Do we need the complete motion read out again? Director Toth.
I just had one question regarding the wording in the communications portion of the motion, please.
You'd like to have it read to you? Thank you. Tara?
Thank you, Chair. The community recreation facilities be restarted as follows. Gibson's Area Community Center be reopened at service level 2, full opening during the pandemic, September through December 2020, while maintaining all of the local health authorities and provincial governing bodies guidelines, and with limited instructor-led programming. Seashell Aquatic Center opening be revisited at September 2020 Planning and Community Development Committee meeting, Sunshine Coast Arena be reopened for dry floor use only September through December 2020 while maintaining all of the local health authorities and provincial governing bodies guidelines. Apologies, I added that. Gibson's and District Aquatic Facility remain closed, service level 0 through the end of 2020, and that staff communicate implications and obtain meaningful and appropriate public feedback on opening options. And for that, this recommendation be forwarded to the July 30th regular board meeting.
Director Toth, follow up?
Yeah, I just wonder if the part about communications of the implications is sufficient enough to capture cost, because that's really what we're looking to see with the communities, if they're willing to shoulder that cost of full reopen.
Staff, are you clear on the direction we're looking at with the recommendation as written?
Yes, Chair. And just for clarification on the clarification, staff would see that community demand for service would be one of the factors that would relate to cost. And so the communications about implications and receiving feedback might be beyond just, are you okay with this number?
Right.
Staff would look to have a package of questions to engage with the community about.
Okay, thank you. Director Ties and Director McMahon.
Yeah, I'd like to amend the motion once again on item number 2, Seashell Aquatic Center, and I would like to have that mirror the same wording as GAC and Sunshine Coast Arena as for September opening, rather than revisit in September, acknowledging lead times to get that facility going.
Hold on, at this point, the recommendation is that we revisit the reopening in September.
Yes, and I would like to have it reopen in September at the same time as the other ones, rather than revisit the discussion about reopening. Am I understanding this correctly?
Yes. Is there a seconder for the amendment? No seconder for the amendment. That amendment dies. Director McMahon.
Wow, this is exciting.
You guys are making me earn my keep today.
Yeah, I'd like to get us to vote this through so that we can get back to a bunch. We have lost a couple of the items that were in the original recommendations, and we do need to discuss them.
Yes.
I'm just going to point out that in terms of public engagement over the next week, the directors are going to be doing it whether we want to or not. So yeah, time to stop shilly-shallying.
All right, seeing no further hands up, we have a long amended recommendation in front of us. Is everybody clear on what we're voting on? All right, so this is all directors except Area A. All those in favor? Any opposed? No, thank you. All right, so to Director McMahon's point, and then we're going to come back to Director Hiltz because you had some other stuff you wanted to follow up as well. On the bottom page, or on the recommendations on page 33, there was a recommendation with regards to the Chinook Swim Club, also with regards to researching a temporary COVID-19 surcharge. And then Director Hiltz wanted to talk about you wanted to talk about information back from staff. So Director McMahon first.
I'd be happy to move those two staff recommendations from page 33.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that? Seconded? Any further comments on that? Director Toth.
Sorry, I heard Director McMahon say 2 recommendations. There's 3 here.
I think the deficit mitigation strategies is part of, well, maybe not. Is that something separate?
We can do it separately. I just wanted to point out that there were 3. That's all.
All right, so we have 2 recommendations on the floor: that staff work with Chinook Swim Club on strategies to maximize value to the user group for their lane fee investment, and that staff research a temporary COVID-19 surcharge to address booking fees and special operating costs and report to a future committee. All those in favor? Thank you. And there's another one on here that, have we covered that off anywhere in anything that we've put forward, or is staff seeing that would be something different?
Thank you, Chair. I think in the clause in the earlier motion about reporting back on implications, deficit mitigation could be included in that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Director Hills.
Yes, Chair. I would like to propose essentially that staff updates the financial projections in Annex D with the current recommendations. That's what I'm trying to. If that's so that's the intent of what I would like to make a motion about. So I'm open to some wording, whether it's financial analysis or analysis, something to update it so that we know that our motion is going to achieve what we intended it to.
Tara, do you have any idea what to put together for that? I think it would be something like part of what's on the bottom of page 33 and top of page 34. Is that sort of what we asked them to do for this meeting, but with regards to all the 4 facilities? Right, we're looking at the cost implications of the decision that we have made or are looking to make at our board meeting next week.
How about we just ask for an updated report based on the recommendations that have been passed? Is that simple?
Tara or Tina, sorry.
Yeah, I think since are we deciding to craft a new motion?
Yes.
Okay. So if that is the case, then, including the researching further mitigations, I think would be important because those are somewhat outside of the service potentially, of what's being contemplated for opening the facilities. So, and that staff include financial considerations or implications and service level changes as a result of the proposed restart program for recreation facilities, and that staff also include deficit mitigation strategies and report to such and such committee. Something to that effect.
That would be CAS on the 30th, a special CAS?
I think there's 2 pieces here. I think you're looking to have information come back to the CAS meeting with regards to the implications of the decisions being put forward here for the restart plan, and that the deficit mitigation strategies would come forward to a later meeting. So we've got 2 different timings in the recommendation, one for the one piece and one for the other. Tina?
I guess my consideration, if the request is to have financial analysis as far as what these proposed restarts are for today, yes, in time for next week, just the agenda goes out tomorrow. I would ask what the capacity is to do that with the rest of the team. So,
okay.
I think a limited update as a late item is possible. There are a lot of, similar to the information that's provided in this report, there will be a lot of qualifications on forecast that we would be able to build in the next few days.
And the only thing I'd add is echoing what Ian said. It's likely to be something that we, are putting together up to and including pretty much the very end of next week. So it'll be coming in, as Jerry has said before, it'll be coming in hot. Right? It'll be coming in hot with lots of qualifications.
All right. Any comments or questions on the recommendation that is on the floor? Dr. Hills.
Has it actually been moved and seconded yet? I don't.
I think you moved it.
I moved it. We got in. Okay, there we.
To get 2 seconders before, but yes. Any further questions or comments on that? All those in favor? All right, thank you. I think we're going to call a bit of a break because I need one. It is 11:46. How about if we say coming back at noon? Does that work for everybody? All right, sounds good. See you at noon. Thank you. We are back with the Corporate and Administrative Services Committee meeting of Thursday, July 23rd, and we are on Annex E, and we've received the report. GM Hall, did you want to speak to the report?
Thank you, Chair. At the current time for the Park Service, a year-end balanced budget is forecast. A stepwise restarting and restoring of service levels adapted to meet health orders and guidelines is underway, and staff are appreciative of park users' patience, support, and cooperation in keeping our parks safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Director McMahon.
Just wondering if we have any ETA on the reopening of the community hall. I realize that each of them is different in terms of size and configuration, but thought I'd ask.
Thank you. GM Hall.
Thank you for the question. The staff are working on finalizing safety plans and getting signage up now, having just finished working through the same process for sports fields. And so we're looking towards a phased progress on restart for halls in mid-August. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Hilt.
Thanks, Chair. As part of the restart planning, has there been consideration kind of the digital readiness of community halls? Is this factoring into staff's considerations as we move forward? So I don't think that we would consider our community halls as digitally ready yet, or our parks. And I believe that ICE-T even had some short-term grants available for immediate kind of things. So if there's any comments from staff about the digital readiness of community halls.
Thank you for the question. Given the strength of even cellular signals at some of our halls, and that's not an experience unique to community halls, certainly no, staff would not consider them digital ready. I think that the director's question is an excellent example of an emergency recovery question that is a good example of what the regional district will have to think about as we find a new normal.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, let me move on to Annex F. This is for Pender Harbor Aquatic and Fitness Center COVID-19 budget implications. And we'll turn over to staff on this one.
Thank you, Chair. For this report, I'll ask Recreation Assistant Manager Adriana Donahue, who was the primary author for this report, to speak to the contents. As a general comment, similar to the community recreation report, staff have provided an analysis and recommendations that are cautious, staged, and focused on a stepwise approach to restoring the service. Thank you.
Thank you. Adrienne?
Thank you, Mr. Don and Chair Seegers. Good morning. This staff report provides service level options and potential budget implications for the Pender Harbor Aquatic and Fitness Center in response to the board resolution from June 11th, 2020. Some background information that is useful to be aware of. The pool is typically closed for annual maintenance August 1st to September 13th. That work is still on track. Similar to what was reported by Mr. Don in the earlier presentation, all proposed options meet provincial health orders, recommendations, and industry guidelines. Ultimately, these result in reduced capacity and some increased costs. The report provides information on potential revenues and operating costs for the 3 service level options. Service level 0, where the facility remains closed, the base facility cost would result in an estimated surplus of $220,000. Service level 1, which is staff's recommendation, would result in an estimated surplus of $95,000. This would mean amenities are available with pre-registered visits and no instructor-led programming to start. This would provide a service to the community, value for tax dollars, and contribute to public health, wellness, and social connectedness. This can be expanded or restricted if health orders or board direction change in response to the pandemic. Service Level 2 is estimated to result in a similar budget year-end position to previous years. However, confidence in the projection is lower. If success is achieved at Service Level 1, an increase to Service Level 2 can be made later in the year, following a slow, steady, and safe approach. To summarize, staff recommend reopening in September as per usual schedule at Service Level 1, which would allow the community to use the amenities available at the Pender Harbor Aquatic and Fitness Center, with consideration to phase in programming later in the year. A year-end surplus is anticipated. Thank you.
Thank you. Directors, any comments or questions? Director Lee.
Yes, do you need a recommendation that you look at phasing in programming later in the year and do it when it's appropriate, or will that just happen automatically?
At staff?
Thank you for the question, Chair. I think staff would look for that opportunity automatically, and I make that statement recognizing that at least as projected right now, based on what we know, there wouldn't be an additional financial impact, and it doesn't create a deficit situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing no questions, there are some recommendations on page 48. Director Lee?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to accept the recommendations as presented.
All right, and this is all voting. Is there a seconder for the recommendations as presented? Seconded? No further comments or questions? All those in favor? Thank you. All right, moving on to item 8, wastewater capital reserve bylaws. This is Annex G. And who's speaking this? Tina, you're speaking to this one? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So as part of the asset management plans for the wastewater facilities, 3 services were identified to require statutory reserves. Those are for Square Bay, Lilies Lake, and Sackinaw Ridge. If the board approves the motion as presented, the bylaws will be presented for 3 readings and adoption.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? All right, so there are recommendations on page 53. This is voting all directors. Director Lee?
I'd like to make a motion to accept the recommendations as presented.
Is there a seconder for that? Seconded? All those in favor? Thank you. Number 9, Annex H. Cooper's Green Hall, Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, ICIP, grant result and next steps. Mr. Hall, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. SCRD received exciting news on July 10th, approval of our application to the Federal Provincial Investing in Canada Infrastructure Grant Program for a hall project in Cooper's Green Park. There are some administrative steps required to accept the grant, which are identified in the recommendations, and there are some next steps to confirm the capital funding plan for this project. Taking into account the grant, amenity contributions, and a significant contribution from the Half Moon Bay Community Association, the remaining SCRD portion of the project cost is estimated at just over $650,000. And for clarity, there's a typo in the table on page 4 of the report. It should say that costs are predicated on a 2021 quarter 1 start, not 2020. And change has occurred since 2018 when this project was planned. There are new projects required in a number of infrastructure areas for the organization and new budget pressures. And the other reports on today's agenda speak to the most recent change affecting our community and SCRD's finances. Considering these changes, staff are seeking a check-in on direction. Several options with high-level financial implications are included in the report, and summarized as number 1, continue with the project as proposed in 2018, using short-term borrowing to close any funding gaps. And it's noted that upcoming parks debt retirement can mitigate the tax impact of borrowing. Or secondly, revise the project to avoid short-term borrowing, looking at options such as renovation of the existing hall, or perhaps even working with the school district to explore joint use possibilities co-located with a school. And staff are prepared to move forward with the project based on board direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Pratt.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to start with, this is exciting news, and it's thank you so much to the work of staff as well as the Half Moon Bay Community Association and the task group in the past for putting all of this together and having a successful grant. And it's exciting to actually be able to finally speak about it publicly. I would like to share some information with the board from conversations I've had with the Half Moon Bay Community Association. Just some comments that they had based on the staff report, just so that the rest of you do have this information as well as we start this discussion. In regards to the funds that the Half Moon Bay Community Association has collected, as of July 15th, so this is regarding page 57, as of July 15th, they now have 231,000 confirmed, according to their records. They've continued to have, once the announcement was made, they continue to have more pledges. So they expect to have at least 246,000 within the next few days. So there's been an incredible amount of support from the community for this project. They would like to say that, and GM Hall might be able to comment further on this, because this, of course, is before my time on the board, that in the initial beginning of looking at the rebuilding of the hall, the Half Moon Bay Community Association had said that they were interested in entering into a memorandum of understanding and look after the operation of the facility, and looking after things like managing it, taking care of janitorial reservations and insurance, as well as maintaining the good order in the interior of the building. And so the president of the organization, as well as one of their board members, have both reiterated that to me, is that the Half Moon Bay Community Association is interested in that type of conversation going forward, as they have said in the past. They did, say through the task force process of looking at the hall and doing the rebuild, that the new design of the hall did take into account sea level rise based on a 50-year plan. And that they do hope that after the 2-year building process, the COVID-19 pandemic will not have implications on gatherings. And they would strongly advise against revising the project, mostly, partly the Half Moon Bay Community Association is very focused on this location, and that's what they entered into with a lot of the background work, and they feel it would mean starting all over again, and are worried about the concern in the community about moving a location. So I just wanted to make sure that the other directors were aware of those concerns that are coming from my community in Half Moon Bay. There is a feeling that it could be, with having a new larger hall, it could create more revenue generating opportunities. Moving back to my thoughts, once again, I think it's an incredible opportunity and it's an incredible success to have this amount of funding. And in going through a lot of the conversation around the Cooper's Green Park, Cooper's Green boat launch concerns, I wonder about the Cooper's Green management plan as a whole, because we have a plan now for the hall, yet there's still one of the other big priorities for that park is maintaining the boat launch and maintaining public and access to the water. And in going through the community conversations with islanders as well as business owners and users of the boat launch, I worry about investing in the hall without a full plan and full decisions for the rest of the boat launch area. So those are my concerns right now, and which is I'm leaning more towards that we may need to have some more community conversation before we move forward on the project as a whole. And I'd be happy to hear from the other directors as well.
How about Director McMahon and Director Ties?
Yeah, I can appreciate the frustration of the Half Moon Bay Community Association, because this has been in the works for a long time. Nevertheless, we are now in the post-COVID era, and I wonder how the design of community halls is going to be impacted. One thing I am starting to hear, finally, it's taken a while, but is that public buildings have to be redesigned to have better HVAC systems, because better air replacement, more attention to how air circulates, air filtering, all that kind of thing has to be considered. And we've never designed a post-pandemic hall. This is new ground. I also have a long-standing concern about building more infrastructure at sea level. I realize that this is supposed to be good for 50 years, but you'll notice that all of the projections for climate change and sea level rise have changed radically in the last few years. It's coming on much faster and much more severe than we ever saw. And finally, if we are building any more infrastructure, I've said this before, but I'll say it again, I think that anything we build should have more than one purpose. And an obvious purpose for a community hall is for emergency refuge. If an earthquake or a tidal wave tidal wave, you're gone. Bye-bye community hall. But we should keep in mind that these buildings are a community asset, and the more different uses we can get out of them, the better. So I'm not prepared to continue with the project as previously conceived. I think we need to stop and take a look at it and reconsider a lot of concerns, including the ones outlined by Director Pratt.
Thank you. Director Ties.
Thank you, Chair. And I hear the comments that Director McMahon made, and I echo those. I don't think a new community hall should be built close to sea level. We just refurbished a community hall that's over 100 years old. And so I think even 50 years thinking ahead with even conservative estimates is not prudent. I think there's a long-term, community halls are a long-term assets to a community, and we need to plan further into the future than just 50 years. And yes, tsunamis would not be good for community halls that's built at sea level either. I don't think that the SCRD should be in the business of running community halls, to be honest. I am, however, in favor of helping a community association get funding and help coordinate with the construction. So I would like to see a plan where the cost of construction does not go to property taxes as much as possible, especially in this day and age. I think building a $3 million community hall that we can't even use in the current climate and putting taxpayers on the hook for $600,000 on top of COVID, water, landfill, and infrastructure deficit issues is not prudent. So I think a more modest building in a better location is something that I would be willing to raise my hand for. And if I did my math right, with current funding expectations, the budget for a non-property tax involvement would be around 1.6 million, which is, I think, a reasonable number. And so those are my comments at this time.
Thank you. Director Lee.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think we need to leave some things to the experts, such as the effects of a tidal wave and the 50-year sea rise. They've done a lot of studies on all of those. And I believe you can build on that site with both of those. And I would hope that we have, before we suggested it was okay, that we had considered those. But it's still something that needs to be taken into consideration. I'm also curious about the use of gas tax to lower the overall cost of the building. Perhaps we can use gas tax money for solars, heat pumps, water, heat, septic, sidewalks. I'll call them all upgrades and use gas tax. Maybe that's an option to lower the overall price. I'd be interested in staff's take on that. But I do believe that the SCRD has got to get out of the business of running community halls. I do agree that we can be in the business of assisting with the upgrade of them and the funding of them, but our focus should be on finding someone to take stewardship of it and effectively ownership of it, doing the whole bundle of keeping her going and including the maintenance. And I think the community would be happier doing that as well. It frees them to get innovative on sources of funding, and it also allows them to get innovative on doing the maintenance and the overall operations. So that's my take on the thing. I heard the problem about 3 million, and I got to admit that's a lot of money for a community. But I'm still open-minded on it, and I think we need to work with the community and find out their wishes and just how wedded they are to the proposal as to an alternate proposal. Well, that's my thoughts. Hope it helps.
Okay, before I move to the next speaker, I just want to indicate voting on this is going to be A, B, D, E, and F. And I have Director Hiltz, Director Pratt, and Director Toth.
Thanks, Chair. Comments on the project? Yeah, agree. It's an excellent opportunity. My concerns as I'm kind of understanding the project more is I'm going to use the language out of the financial sustainability policy, which talks about new services or major enhancements. I guess this would be considered a major enhancement. You're not just maintaining a service, you're increasing the service level. So in terms of some of the things that have been said, I guess the summary is, has a full life cycle analysis been done before a major enhancement has been done? That's kind of a question that I have. I don't know, which would include maintenance, asset management. I wouldn't do it, that's for sure, but someone who knows how to do these things would be doing it. So has there been a full life cycle analysis done in line with the financial sustainability policy around major enhancements? That's kind of my biggest question. Then looking the 50 years down the road, what is this going to cost in 50 years, and who's going to replace it, and all those things that we're dealing with other facilities. So I'm not sure if anyone has an answer for that.
Staff, have we looked at that? We didn't, there was nothing like that in the report. GM Hall?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. There are some details about operating costs and prospective capital replacement costs included on page 5 of the report, or page 59 of the agenda. And I guess given that we don't have a comprehensive asset management plan for our parks service yet, that's one of the services for which a plan is to be developed, and we're just in the process of rolling out new accounting standards relating to end of life for facilities. This is the information that's included in the report is relatively complete. Based on the state of the art for this service, and our CFO may have additional comments.
Tina, did you want to add anything?
No, just to say that at a high level, they have been considered. I don't think we have a complete, it's maybe like a Class D estimate right now.
Okay. We've got Director Lee, Director Pratt, and Director Toth.
Sorry, Chair, did you call my name?
Yes, you're okay. You took your hand down. Okay, Director Pratt and Director Toth.
Thank you. Director Lee had asked earlier, or had made a comment earlier about using gas tax funds, and it'll be pretty restrictive in how gas tax funds can be used on this project due to the ICIP regulations. There's stacking, and our CFO or GM Hall can speak to this a little bit more because they're certainly more versed in this than I am. But so there is going to be a limitation to what gas tax funds can be used for this project, just due to the grant. Otherwise, the other thing I wanted to comment on, if we do go ahead and look at the option of turning it over to a community group or a community association, because I heard what Director Ties was saying in helping a community build a hall and then turning it over to them, which is essentially what is happening, or what we're doing in partnership as a community association is a very valued partner in this project. Then is it just the hall? Like there's a lot of other questions, because we have a whole park here with that is very well used by the public, and there's other areas of the park that need to be looked at as well. Is it just the hall as with an agreement? Has this been done before in our regional district? Does anybody does staff have any comment on how something like that would look in turning this over to a community group after it's built? Or is it just too early for that question?
Mm-hmm. Staff.
Thank you, Chair. There are a range of partnership approaches used for throughout our organization, and even thinking about community halls, and those are structured differently in different locations. And I think about the Pender Harbor Ranger Station as one example, or Sarah Ray Hall and the Pender Harbor Living Heritage Society, a slightly different format used, or the relationship with the school district for community space at Roberts Creek School. So certainly there's flexibility to look at different approaches to management and partnership. I guess the caution or the caveat I would put on that is that those are all partnerships relating to operations and management. They're not divestment. So it remains a public asset, and there's an agreement with a group to further the use of the asset for community benefit. Thanks.
So I'm going to ask the follow-up to that, because Director Pratt actually led into my question. When you talk about the expenses as listed on page 59, and we have the community association indicating that they would be willing to step up and be the operational arm, basically, of the facility, would we then also look at having them cover off the costs, the any utilities, all those kinds of things, as well as capital replacement? Is that part of what we'd be looking at? Because this then goes to Director Hiltz's comment about sustainability of the facility. Or would it be that there would still be a taxation requirement to cover off some of those other pieces? Or is that how we would actually look at structuring it?
I think, Chair, it would be premature to speculate on those things. I would have to assume that some costs would need to remain with the regional district if the asset remains a regional district asset. And I think about things like insurance, where there would be some costs that would stay with us. And the structure of any agreement and the roles and responsibilities of parties involved would be something that would have to be negotiated. The ability of a community association to sustain operating costs, which would include maintenance, as well as capital replacement, would be that would be a significant undertaking. Thank you.
I guess the reason I'm bringing that up is, if the community association is looking at, they're saying they're willing to take this on, I think that's a conversation that they need to really think about as well in coming forward to actually make that arrangement with us, right? They need to be very clear. It needs to be very clear on both sides what each is responsible for.
Yes, Chair, absolutely. And any time that staff are involved in these types of conversations, and I think about some of the trail stewardship conversations that we have brought forward to the committee over the past few months, we're always looking for a long-term sustainable solution that ultimately benefits our community, but that means it has to work for the partner group too.
Yes, thank you. Director Toth, Director McMahon, and Director Lee.
Thank you, Chair. I'm trying not to say too much on this matter since I don't get to vote on it and I won't be paying any taxes to support it. But I do want to point out that the community association and the Half Moon Bay community at large seems to be quite set on this location. They've raised substantial funding based on this location, and even now we're bringing in additional funds for a hall at Cooper's Green. We talked about, briefly about making our halls multi-purpose. It's a great idea. It needs to be that way. One feature of siting a hall near the water is that in the event of an emergency or disaster, we do have marine access for evacuation, bringing in supplies, whatever we need. Considering other locations in Half Moon Bay, this is actually a great potential for a hall to be cut off from the community in a disaster, which could, become a liability rather than an asset. Community halls are pretty fundamental gathering location for our communities. And I don't think that should be forgotten during these considerations. The the Davis Bay Community Association completely runs and maintains their hall. And yes, it's an older facility, but it is possible for a community association to strictly manage a facility. And the fact that that the Half Moon Bay Community Association is willing to take on the maintenance and the bookings and potential costs around that, I think that has a huge potential for operational savings for the regional district. One important thing to consider too is that rental fees definitely need to be looked at for a facility that would be this new and this complex. It's a fantastic location for weddings, festivals, events, small concerts, things like that. And charging $15 an hour would be doing the community a great disservice on a building like this in this location. Thanks.
Director McMahon and then Director Lee.
Yes, following up on, sorry, there's a tree falling on me.
Really? Oh.
Yes. Never mind, it hasn't hit me yet. Yeah, sorry, that was a little distracting. Regarding operating the community halls, yeah, I really have lost my train of thought here. It's, all of the halls are different. We acquired them all differently. They have different ages. They have different costs of operating them. And I believe they're all in the same service. And that is a little bit problematic because, you know, if you're asking the taxpayers in E to pay for a very elaborate hall in B, you know, should the taxpayers of Area E just be paying for the halls in Area E, especially when we're starting to look at capital replacement costs, because that becomes pretty significant. And as I've heard from another director, you know, not all of the areas have community halls that are operated by the SCRD. There are a lot of cans of worms here. I was going to ask where we're at with public consultation on the boat launch, because it is part of the whole picture. I agree with Director Pratt, is that we should be looking at the whole picture of Cooper's Green, not just, you know, pieces in isolation. So where are we with that moving forward?
Staff and Director Pratt can speak to it as well. Director Pratt or staff, whichever. I know you're all involved.
I think it's me because I think it's my project and I'm just dragging staff along for the ride on this one. So, okay. Currently we had the community consultation or conversation on Monday of this week. I still have, I'm spending the day out at Thormanby on Saturday to talk with residents out there too regarding their needs. One thing that has come up though, and looking at the whole big picture, is I was questioned on why, when we applied for this grant, didn't we also look at the boat launch as well as part of the whole project? And the only answer I had was it wasn't on our radar at that time to do it, because the hall is has been the focus. The hall replacement has been the focus for the last few years, and not necessarily upgrades to the boat launch. And I'll take responsibility for that because I'm the one that's elected at the table. I wish you know, I had been more cognizant earlier on of all the issues that we had coming up with the launch, and had been more of a voice for that, because we could have put some additions into the grant. And I don't know if there's an option. The whole boat launch piece, to just continue on to actually fully answer the question, I still need to sit down with staff and go over the information that I'm gathering, so we can bring it to the board as a whole. I really do want us to look at the whole park, including the launch, including the hall replacement as a whole project on its own, before we actually move ahead with a plan to replace the hall, or to move forward with that project. We do have some flexibility in the timeline, as long as the project is finished, as long as we have a completion before March
2027, I think it said.
Yeah, so we have some time. And then I just look further to the CAO or GM of planning for further comment on that piece regarding the boat launch.
GM Hall, did you want to weigh in there, or is it still too early? You still have information to gather.
Well, I guess staff are listening, and staff see that there may be opportunities to refine the management plan or improve the operation of the boat ramp. What exactly that looks like, we're still in the information gathering and listening phase. With thanks to Director Pratt for leading the efforts there. Certainly, there's tension between a boat ramp and an adjacent hall, and the opportunities to reduce that tension through the design and placement of the hall were considered as part of the project up to this stage. I think there are some unanswered questions about the possibilities to do something with the ramp as part of the hall project, or further learn from what we're hearing now about the ramp to refine the project as it relates to the hall. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Lee.
Thank you, Chair. I start out with the fact that the community is very set on this location, and they need a place for their weddings and their festivals, and it's a heritage of the community to have one. And not only that, to have it at Cooper's Green. Cooper's Green is one of the very early areas established for this purpose, and it's at the core of Half Moon. So I'm very sympathetic to their desire, and I think we need to find a way of helping them make it happen. But helping them make it happen, we got to consider equity in a service, and that goes two ways. So I think I don't need to expose on that. I think everybody understands that some people get more, some people get less, but it's still, we all contribute. Not concerned about a capital replacement. Those, if that hall is maintained properly, buildings last for hundreds of years. So the real focus is to make sure it's maintained properly and kept up to standards. Makes good sense to have ownership by the SCRD because one of the main expenses is insurance, and using the power of the municipal insurance in multiple facilities makes it a very, very attractive way of keeping the cost lower. And I read that replacement hall design did seem to contemplate that there might be a design and a cost trade-off consideration based on funding availability. We do know the funding availability now, or at least the majority of the funding availability. We know the gap between one and the other. It seems to me that's a challenge for the community group again. You know what you're going to get subsidized for. Do you want to bring the hall down a little, or do you want to go find more money somewhere, somehow, from donors? That's something I think we could revisit before we make a decision. And again, that I believe to be a community decision. We just need to work with them. If we could consider, and this is something that that last meeting on the boat launch brought to mind for me, a community boat launch is an extremely valuable amenity, and it's valuable for not just the immediate people, but it's valuable for the whole coast. And we don't have enough community boat launches. And part of a community boat launch is also parking for the vehicles, so you don't have it all jammed up. So if we're doing some planning for a hall, we should undoubtedly be doing some planning for that, because I don't think we're going to find another spot suited to a community boat launch like Cooper's. And even if we did, we shouldn't want to get rid of Cooper's. We should be wanting to add some more, not take them away. So those are my thoughts. I'm supportive of whichever way Lori feels comfortable going. That's all I can say about it.
Thank you. Director Pratt.
I just there's one other thing I did want to address that I think it is important. The community association, yes, and there is a contingent that is very supportive of the hall in this location in Pender or in Half Moon Bay. But there is also a contingent that is not and would prefer the location be in an area that's more accessible and in a better walking location for students or for use otherwise. So I do want to bring that up as, and I know it was looked at in the initial community consultation, but it is something to note that yes, there is a lot of support for the hall in this location. There's also support for a new hall in a different location. And in the past, I know Connor Park had been looked at for, historically had been looked at as a location as well. So I just want to make sure that that point has been brought up. And once again, you know, we do have financial and pandemic pressures right now that we're looking at, and so I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Director McMahon and Director Toth.
I'm getting to the point that I kind of shudder whenever I see the phrase "and that the board provide further direction," because that's when we sit here and start frantically spinning our wheels. You know, I'm fine with the recommendations as presented by staff. This is the further direction part that we are really wrestling with here.
Yes.
Either we need to get down to some clear direction, or we need to defer this and come back to it. So, over to you, sir.
Director Toth, and then we'll start pulling things together.
Thank you, Chair. I just had a really quick question. On page 57 of the report, underneath other support, staff have developed a list of meaningful material donations that would assist with the project. So a question for staff, do these kind of contributions count towards our share of the funding, or is our share required to be cash at the table?
Staff?
They could contribute to our share of the project. I don't believe it's prescriptive.
All right, so I wanted to point out the page 57 under grant opportunities. I know that the Half Moon Bay Community Association has continued to apply to the Sunshine Coast Community Forest Legacy Fund. As you know, they haven't logged this year and don't anticipate, they don't know at this point if they're going to be logging this year, given how things are progressing. And so they wouldn't necessarily have money until sometime next year. That's it. So we have some recommendations on page, sorry, back to the page 50 something. 55. So we've got 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then the further direction. And what I'm hearing is that the further direction may have something to do with a little bigger scope and potentially community engagement. Director Pratt.
So I would be prepared to move the first 4 recommendations right now, just to get those off the table, and then we can go to the end further that we can do that as a separate motion. So
thank you. Is there a seconder for that? It has to be rural directors. Thank you. Any further comments on the first 4? All those in favor? Thank you. And then Director Pratt, did you want to take a stab at the rest? The further that.
Okay. I don't have, I do think we need to go back, whether it's revitalize the task force or sit down with the community association, which I know the community association is keen to meet. They've already requested a couple of meetings, and just to discuss the future of, next steps for the project. And I don't know if I have any clear definitive line on what's on scope at this time, but I think we need to go for that next conversation. But I see that some of my other directors have their hands up, so maybe they can provide some thoughts.
Director McMahon and Director Ties.
I thought we could delegate Director Pratt to meet with the community and come back with some possible next steps.
Director Ties.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll help, but the way I'm leaning on this is that I wouldn't be willing to put up my hand for something in that current location. If a community hall is supposed to last hundreds of years, it won't at sea level. That's just the fact of how things are going right now. And the experts agree on that. And also, I would like to see a more modest budget. Other than that, so that's something that maybe Director Pratt can take away, but I'm just one of 9 hands that are going up.
Okay, I'm going to weigh in here. I know that the Community Association in Half Moon Bay is very invested in this project, in this site. And I'm not familiar with who they are or how many people are on the Community Association or how much they actually represent the whole community. I don't know that. So I do know that, we have a number of community associations in Seashell. Some of them have lots of members. Some of them have very few members. And we don't know how they communicate out to the greater population. So I would hope that if community engagement, community input is sought, it is broader than just the community association, that the whole community has some input into moving this forward, because the whole community pays. Or the whole community will be on the hook for the maintenance and the management of it. Director Pratt.
Okay, thank you. And I will say that the community association, they are fairly well connected, as well as they have a good relationship with the Half Moon Bay Community School. So they're very well liaised into the school as well, and they keep that very open. And they, one of their board members actually manages the Half Moon Bay Everything site, which on Facebook, which is pulls together everything Half Moon Bay, almost every Half Moon Bayer, plus a number of sea shelters I know and are on that page, and it's a really good community outreach piece. So I think maybe what I'm leaning towards then for a motion for going forward, and thanks Director McMahon for volunteering me or voluntolding me, but I've got a lot of community consultation going on right now that should probably, it's quite interesting, but what I would say is that the board requests staff to communicate or to meet with Half Moon Bay community. I want to go broader than the association. So with Area B regarding the points that we've brought up here, is that clear enough?
I think you probably need to be a little clearer about the points. You're talking about
potential location, about potentially changing location, potentially, because this is what I'm hearing from the directors. And if we're going to be asking for taxation dollars on this, we need to make sure that we're looking after everyone's asset here. So that the board requests staff to consult with Area B regarding the a change in
citing of the hall, maybe?
Citing and change in scope of the project, and report back to the board Q3, Q4, or at a future committee. Is that clear enough? I'm seeing.
Okay, when you're saying broaden, like the broader scope, are you talking about the boat launch? And the parking?
Not at this point. I'm considering, oh, but no, okay. Because there's a couple of issues that have been brought up, because there's the boat launch piece, but there's also the piece around changing the scope of the project from what was originally envisioned.
So you're talking about to Director Ty's comments around?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I'm muddled. It's a complicated issue.
Yes.
And it's and I feel what early from the community association, what their vision is, but I also recognize that there's a lot of other issues at play here. As we're looking at the long-term financial sustainability of the hall, as well as the entire park management plan for Cooper's Green. So the scope needs to be increased to include, I think, the entire park management plan, and that needs to be revisited.
Okay, so I'm going to go to Tara and see if we've got something that she's got started. That's okay. She's got started that we can craft to address all of the issues you brought up, and then we'll go see if there's a second or whatever we put together. Thanks, Tara.
Thanks, Chair. Staff consult with Area B community residents regarding potentially changing the hall location and siting, and changes to the scope of the project, including park management plan, and report back to a future committee.
Does that cover off the concerns and the issues?
I believe so, but I'd look to GM Hall and the CFO and CAO if that covers or what they're looking for here.
GM Hall?
Thank you, Chair. That's clear and complete. Beyond the question of the work direction, there is the consideration of resources, but perhaps a separate question. Thank you.
Okay. Tina, did you need to weigh in on this?
No, I think perhaps just having an offline discussion just as what the impacts would be as far as any additional resources. And I think maybe in context to the updated capital plan, there might sort of be an operational piece for rescoping, because that's not currently contemplated. So staff can have further discussions on what that might look like.
Okay. So if the motion is as crafted is okay with directors, I'd look for a seconder for the motion that's on the floor first. Okay, seconded. Then we've got, sorry, Director Lee, sounds like you might need to make an amendment. That's okay. We'll get there. Director McMahon and then Director Lee.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about timeline, because, I don't know about you, but as a director, this has been about the busiest 10 days that I've had since elected. It's been nuts. And I think staff are running in circles too. And there is no urgency in my mind to moving this forward, certainly this year. The other concern that I have is I think in our post-COVID world, we are likely to see changes to public health regulations, and certainly regulations around gathering areas. So I would not be in a hurry to settle a design until we know for sure what what that's going to look like. We wouldn't want to have to change the project halfway through.
Thank you. Director Lee and then Director Pratt.
If Director Cole would like to go first, I've talked several times.
I've got Director Pratt. I don't have anybody else but you.
Oh, okay. Sorry then. I was just trying to make sure that all of the elements that I was thinking about were in that motion.
Okay.
So I was thinking that we needed to understand the scope of what we're proposing here, the design as is, what cost reductions we might have to make using design. If we went ahead with the original, perhaps there's a donation target we would give the community that would then we would find it acceptable. And with the scope, so the design, the cost reductions also come the location. I think those are, you need to know the location to know the design. So somehow need to determine that. That's probably the first thing. And then the donation targets. So it's a business case saying we got this much. If you can get this much, we'll go ahead once you know the design. And if we do it at Cooper's Green, we need a vision for the entire park there. We don't really need a launch what to do, but we need to agree on a vision for the park before we start building. And so we might say, okay, we're going to leave the launching ramp there and make her bigger later on, and we're going to need more parking, and we got this part set aside for it. Now you can build your hall over there in that corner. So we need to do all three of those things before we do any building. So Donna hit it right on the nose. We're quite premature to start talking about building right now. Too many unknowns.
Right. And I think the recommendation that's on the floor is addressing all of the concerns and considerations you brought up. Because we are looking at the siting, right, as part of that conversation that needs to happen before we can go into the other pieces. So what I'm seeing happening here is we're going to say to the government, yes, we're going to sign this agreement for grant funding, but we have no idea right now how we're going to spend it or where we're going to spend it or what we're going to actually spend it on exactly. All of that has to be sorted out. And my understanding from staff is that they've had those conversations with the government, and they're actually okay with that at this point. As long as it turns out to be in Half Moon Bay someplace and it's a hall, we can do it. Okay. Director Pratt.
Thank you. Just a couple of notes that we do have a park management plan for which essentially is a visioning document for Cooper's Green. And it is available on the Cooper's Green section of the website, and it's a good read because I've learned a lot, and it is a good it's a good document. It's a great document. It is from 2015, which is definitely pre-COVID era. You know, and it's entering into this not lightly because I'm very cognizant of I do represent all of Half Moon Bay, and I need to look after I need to make sure that I'm looking after all of the residents' interest. But I'm wondering if the motion that's on the floor, if it also is broad enough to have that piece in there about the potential Half Moon Bay Community Association taking on the operational side, or if staff would need an additional, and that for that conversation to help us to happen as well.
GM Hall, do you want to weigh in on that one?
Sure, Chair. If that's of interest to the committee, then a direction on that would be welcomed. Thank you.
Would you like to make an amendment?
Yeah, I would propose that we also, as part of the consultation, engage with explore the explore the potential for an cooperative arrangement with the Half Moon Bay Community Association in regards to operational management of the hall.
There's a seconder for that amendment? Seconded? Any further comments, questions? Yeah, I think that's pretty clear.
Is that clear enough for staff?
Yes, it is. I think on this item, staff have enough to, we have a good sense of where the committee is recommending this be taken. So thank you very much.
So my ponderings and applications are going okay?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, all those in favor of the amendment? So any further comments on the motion on the floor with the amendment on it? All those in favor of the recommendation on the floor? Sorry, Director Pratt?
I just want to say that the question that was brought up by staff with the concern around resources, and I'm assuming that's time, energy, as well as any financial resourcing towards this, may have to go into 2021, is what I'm kind of inferring, or?
Thank you. Staff would consider that, and 2021 would be a possibility, but we can take a look at that as next steps following board direction on this. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, all those in favor of the recommendation? Thank you. All right, we are at 1:08. We're not going to get through this complete agenda prior to our board meeting, and we also need a break for lunch. CAO, I see you unmuted your phone, or
you're heading down the path I was going to broach, which is there's more agenda left than there is time. We've not had a chance to do the closed agenda yet, and there's still the hospital district meeting scheduled after the board meeting.
Yes.
So what you'll need to wrestle with is what we can get done between now and the board meeting, recognizing that we may need a break, and there's probably, I'd look to other members of the senior leadership team to see if there's any items that have to be dealt with today that couldn't be potentially moved to the special CAS agenda on the 30th.
And prior to the board meeting is one of the considerations. Yeah. GM Remco, Rosenboom.
There's one report on the in-camera meeting that will have to go to board this afternoon.
Okay. Could we move that to the in-camera board meeting? That's an option? Yes? Okay, and that would take care of that piece? All right. Director Lee.
I had that motion under new business that I'd like to deal with prior to the board meeting, if possible.
Prior to the board meeting? Okay. Any others? Yeah, Tina?
Yeah, just to say that the 3 items remaining for the open session are absolutely not time sensitive, because they're just receipt for information and taking any questions regarding the semi-annual. So those can be deferred to another time.
Okay, so if we were to take care of the new business from Director Lee so that we could refer that to the board meeting, the rest of the items on the agenda could actually go to the next meeting in September, is what you're saying? Or to next week to the special meeting? I don't know what the agenda for next week looks like already.
It would probably be to next week on the special CAS agenda, which might mean that we end up in a similar pickle next week at CAS.
Okay.
I'll move that we item 11, 12, and 13 are deferred to next week's CAS agenda.
And 10 we've already received, so.
Oh, sorry.
There's no fishing. That's fine. It's for information.
But we haven't had a chance to discuss, so sorry.
Right.
It hasn't been seconded yet, so I'll move that items 10, 11, 12, and 13 are moved to the July 30th CAS agenda.
All right, is there a seconder for that? Seconded. All in favor? Thank you. So let's go to new business. Director Lee.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if everybody had a chance to read the motion that I proposed. If not, I could put it up on the screen for you to have a look at while I talk. Would that be acceptable?
That would be fine. Sure.
If I can find it. Can you see it now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Just as an introduction to this, the BC Geographical Names Office is seeking input from the local government stakeholders and the general public on a proposal to change the name of an unincorporated area within SCRD area, Egmont Pender Harbor, known as Madeira Park, and changing it to Salalis. Government representatives suggested the decision to change the name requires strong community support, and the general public is encouraged to make their views known to the local government to ensure their response reflects their communities. And this is an important step in the process when considering names for unincorporated communities. And I think that the SCRD Board of Directors and the Seashell Nation may wish to take this opportunity to engage the public and provide historical context, text, and associated information prior to concerned community organizations and individuals providing their comments. And in order to facilitate this, I am making the motion you see. My other comments was, I'm actually hoping there's going to be further renaming of various and multiple areas up and down the coast, because it's important to preserve our heritage. And I'm going to get this word wrong, the Shashalhelum, anyways, which is a derivative of the Seashell language. And I believe the signs really do help with that. And so I'm not thinking that this is the renaming of the Madeira is the beginning or the end of this. I believe we're on a journey to do more of it. So these are the motion that I'd like to make. And it's no use me repeating it. I think everybody can read it. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. I'd like to comment on number 3, and that is in the Pender Harbor area. There's traditionally town hall meetings to discuss issues like this, and they ask everybody to come and make their views known in presentations before the questions and answering period. And I believe it's very healthy for us and for everybody to use that process. So that's the idea of that. And the idea of it is for heavy involvement with the not-for-profits themselves. And they do want to do this. And they do want the Seashell Nation and the government to participate, but that's for a future decision.
So I have a question about number 2 and number 3. They're almost identical, right? Number 2 is Ministry of Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation and Ministry of Forests, Lands, Natural Resource Operations and Rural Development, an online town hall meeting with all of those various people and the SCRD directors. And then number 3 is that those same people have an online town hall meeting with the SCRD, with all those other people.
This is the wrong one. I messed up here because I did it twice. Sorry. Now I got to find the right one. Just when I thought I had this aced. I should have checked it first.
Yeah, I can read the one that you sent us by email.
That's the one I was looking for. Can you pop that up for me, Darnelda?
I can't because it's on my other computer.
Oh, okay.
I
I'll
think
find
most directors have it. Do you have it? It came yesterday. Tara, do you have it?
Thank you, Chair. Could I just clarify what the first line might be meant to say? It didn't come through very clear. What I have is recommended that the Seashell Nation be invited to a Sunshine Coast Regional District Board to Seashell Council meeting to discuss the proposed place name change for Madeira Park.
I think this is to do with the fact that there is community-to-community funding available from UBCM, and so that's why it's written in that way.
But it says invited to SCRD board to Seashell Council, or invite the SCRD board, or how?
I think we're looking at not having a board meeting, but having a community-to-community meeting between the Seashell Nation and the SCRD board. So the Seashell Council with the SCRD board having a meeting between the two bodies.
Okay.
Staff has rescued me again.
I've started sharing it on my screen. I don't know if you guys.
Yes, we can see it. Okay, so there's a recommendation. I understand Director Lee, you'd like to move that recommendation?
Yes, I would, please.
Is there a seconder? Director Toth. Oh, there's a seconder. Okay. Director McMahon, Director Toth. Over to you.
I just wanted to really quickly point out that when we had this conversation at Seashell Council, our CAO pointed out that the wording for item number 1 needs to say community to community in order to access the UBCM funding. So I'm going to propose that as an amendment rather than it say SCRD board to Seashell Council, that it would say community to community in order to access UBCM funding.
So
So that second Seashell should be taken out of there as well. So it would be that the Seashell Nation be invited to an SCRD community-to-community meeting to discuss the proposed place name change for Madeira Park. Okay, all those in favor of the amendment? Thank you. So we have a recommendation. Any other comments about the recommendation? Director Hills.
So the intent is that this will be a C2C grant through UBCM will be applied for. That's the intent behind this for some funding. Is that?
It makes it available to be able to apply for funding if that is open.
So do we need to make a motion to actually apply for this funding? If this is the intent of it, then we need to actually...
Tina's nodding yes.
We'd need a motion to that would support applying for the funding, recognizing that I don't know if Tina knows, I don't know right now if the window for the funding is available, but you would be authorizing us to explore it and apply if available.
Okay, Director Hiltz, would you like to add that as an amendment?
Yes, I would. That would be an and further that staff explore the opportunity of the C2C funding.
And apply should it be available? Yes?
Yes.
And a seconder for that? Seconded? All right. All those in favor of that amendment? Thank you. Okay, Director Ties.
Yes, thank you. I think this is great. I think there's a huge opportunity here for some further sharing, some further reconciliation, and I think it would be fantastic to learn more about the Seashell stories, and this is part of it. I also acknowledge that Director Paul is at the table here, and he may have something to say, but I'll leave that up to him.
Thank you. Director Kroll?
I'm just wondering if we want to treat it within this or in a separate issue dealing with the Seashell of the Squamish Nation, as areas of the regional district are also in their nation.
Right, at this point, I think this is a specific request that came through from the province that needs to be dealt with in a timely manner, because they have requested that we provide input and feedback at the SCRD board. Director Paul, did you want to address this?
Forward to the conversation. I think it's something that's long overdue. It's something, one of the reasons I got myself appointed to this particular board was to have these discussions and have these debates and get involved. I will work to get my team together and my storytellers, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you. All right, so there's a recommendation on the floor. All those in favor of the recommendation? Thank you. So we have a motion to go in camera, but are we going to, does the other piece that's in camera, I'm going to look to staff, do we leave that till next week as well? Or how do we, I guess I'm looking at process, how do we do this?
Camera first.
Thank you, Chair. We probably need to move in camera to actually discuss whether or not we're referred.
So I look for a motion to the public be excluded from attendance of the meeting in accordance with section 91G and K and section 92B of the community charter. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you. And then are there any questions from any attendees before we do that? I don't see any questions. All right, so then we'll move into in camera from IT.
Thank you, Chair. I will undertake that right now. And if you could ask the remaining attendee to depart the meeting.
Thank you. We are out of in camera. I'd like a motion to adjourn the meeting. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you very much. And we have no attendees, no questions. See you back at 2 o'clock. Enjoy your